Lucifer means Lightbringer presents the mythical astronomy of ice and fire.
Welcome to the Church of Starry Wisdom. It is your host, Lucifer means Lightbringer. And we're here with Starry Wisdom Sunday with actual Starry Wisdom Church. I found it. Poking around, looking for banners on the internet, and I was like, holy Toledo, Batman. It's the Church of Starry Wisdom. So I clicked buy and ship as quickly as I could. And here we are. And I'm joined by two wonderful guests. I am joined by, first, the wonderful Archmaester Emma of the Red Mice.
Hello. Sorry, I jumped in too quickly. Hello.
Yeah, I gave you the delayed, I gave you the pause and then tag on a little more. That is always terrible with the across the pond time difference. But do say hello. Tell us where you come from.
I'm from Britain. Apologies if there are any whiz-bang noises at the moment. There's currently fireworks, displays, and so on because we're celebrating Guy Fawkes trying to blow up Parliament because that's quirky British, thing to do. So I'm Archmaester Emma from the Red Mice at Play blog. Trying to set up a YouTube channel, but I'm still working on Red Fire to get that out before Fire and Blood to then do my first video. So that's where we are at the moment.
Nice. Well, it's always important to take time and get it right. And I will tell you a little story about taking the time to get things right in just a second. But first, let me say hi to my other guest, which is, of course, the Hand of the Dragon, the Hands of Dorn, Mallory Starshine, SANRIXIAN. Say hello.
Hi, I'm SANRIXIAN. You guys are all probably familiar with me by now. I am on Twitter at SANRIXIAN, and that's mainly where you can talk to me and hang out with me and find me. And I post a lot of my art there too.
And let me just say, SANRIXIAN, thank you very much for joining us each and every week as you do. I get countless comments and feedback telling me how much they enjoy the visual aspect of the live streams lately. It really definitely just brings a whole nother dimension, and occasionally you just captivate us all and strike gold with something like the Grey King in his throne, or the strapping Elmo to the front of the yep. So those moments are part of Starry Wisdom history, and I just want to say thank you on behalf of everyone.
Of course, I'm just really glad that you offered me a platform where I could use my talent of drawing even silly things to bring happiness to people. And I'm going through a rough patch in my life, like I've probably mentioned everyone. So it's just extra appreciated, all the comments and all the love. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, lots of rough patches lately for various folks, but we've always got to cling to these great things like Song of Ice and Fire, and the love of the community get us through the tough times. So shout out to everyone who's dealing with something a little extra tough this week or these days, for sure. And let me just say that on my end, it's pretty amazing to see some of these metaphors and symbols come to life in a visual form, because so much of what I'm talking about is very esoteric and abstract. We're talking about the god's eye as a symbol that's both an eclipse and also somebody's eye, and it's also a lake, and it's just all these various concepts that we throw out there that it really helps. Like the Grey King is a perfect example. We're told about Naga's bones, but we don't see them. And I've gone on to say, well, the throne must have been a Weirwood throne, and now we get to visualize and see what it might be like with this old guy sitting in the. And you actually have the do you have that one handy to show, the Grey King? I thought you did, right?
Yes, I do. Hold on one second. That is in progress.
Henry is in the process of sort of putting the finishing touches on that one so we can post it. That's why you haven't seen it posted.
Actual special announcement live. I'm creating a calendar for 2020. So this, along with Sansephone and a couple other serious paintings that I have, are going to be included in that calendar.
Probably 2019, right?
2019, yeah, Jesus. I'm sorry, I'm so bad at dates.
You don't need that much time, do you?
No. I don't need that much time at all. But here's Mr. Grey King. He's getting there. I'm still working on the lighting and the coloration and everything, but this isn't an additional way I paint, where I kind of paint monochromatic and then paint color over it. I'm sure you guys have noticed that in the chat and everything, but yeah, super
Love
cool.
it. Love it. Yeah. And again, this is it's a real joy to me to see some of these esoteric metaphors and things come to life. So thank you on behalf of all the myth heads.
Of course. I would love to create content for you guys.
And creating content you are. And so we actually let me take this moment to announce some Patreon stuff. Actually, we've got some new stuff. We've been putting our heads together and thinking about some ways that I can bring some extra benefits to the patrons. To be honest, I sort of just work at a fever pitch and just like put out tons of content. But I was looking for something I could do a little special for the myth heads of the Patreon community. And so I came up with a couple different things with the help of SANRIXIAN and a couple other folks. And the first thing that we did is that we announced that we were going to start doing a Patreon only mini essay every week. And essentially we're going to put out a little short essay, which will probably also be a video. And that will be Patreon only content. And it will be just an extra thing. I've got lots of little sort of odds and ends laying around. And so those are going to turn into little Patreon only contents. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have a poll every month. And I'm going to give you a few possibilities and let everybody vote. And we just had our first poll this week. And we had 92 votes, which is great participation. So thanks, everybody. The three choices were Jaime and Brienne, sword fight in the river, Lord Tytos Blackwood and his Solar, and Sarnor and the Fisher Queens, descendants of the great empire of the Dawn. And all three of those are pretty tasty subjects. And coming in third was Sarnor and the Fisher Queens with 25 votes. And the first two were only separated by one vote. So coming in second place was Lord Tytos Blackwood and his Solar with 33 votes. And in first place with 34 votes was Jaime and Brienne, sword fighting in the river. I knew you guys wouldn't be able to resist that. So sometime this week, I will be putting out on Patreon only a little mini essay about Jaime and Brienne, sword fighting in the river. And you'll get those other two soon enough. So don't worry. I will get those to you.
Didn't you have a catchy little name for what you're going to call those?
Well, kind of. There's two different things going on. Separately from that, I'm going to start putting out short YouTube videos, which is something I've been meaning to do for a long time. I've only give people like hour-long stuff at best, and it goes up from there. It's not very good marketing strategy. And so I've known for a long time that I need to do some shorter stuff. So I'm going to start doing videos called LML and 13. And that's my catchy little name because, of course, 13, Baker's dozen, last hero math, all that stuff. So essentially what it'll be is 13-minute long videos. There'll be distilled little bits of stuff from my bigger essays to try to, bring in the plebs to the mythical astronomy crowd. I'm kidding, of course, but it's true that honestly, a lot of people are busy and they don't have an hour, 2 hours to consume big, long things, or maybe they've heard of some of my ideas floating around there, but the sheer size of the episodes are intimidating and so people don't get into it. So I'm going to start doing these short ones. Like, for example, I've already written up the script for one that is just showing the parallels between the symbolism of the others and the Kingsguard. So I'm going to sort of just give a real basic version of that in 13 minutes. You guys know that stuff from the Blood of the Other series and the Moons of Ice and Fire series. But for the uninitiated, it might be, pretty cool to just go through all that symbolism and be like, hey, look, the Kingsguard are impersonating the others. Why is that? Well, come listen to Mythical Astronomy if you want to hear more. So it'll be that kind of stuff. And I will probably turn some of these Patreon-only mini essays into LML 13 episodes eventually. But for now, those ones that come out on Patreon will be Patreon only. So a little incentive. And then the other thing we're going to be doing for our patrons is going to be, we're going to send some SANRIXIAN stickers out. We're still working on the exact amount of stickers, but it looks like it's going to be $13 and up. Patrons are going to get various little bundles of mythical astronomy stickers that we're making. Some of the little smaller drawings that Sandra has done, like the Fire of the Gods little animation, or
Cthulhu, Cerberus. There's definitely going to be a moon meteor in there. Basically, all of the best goofs. It's gonna be a good goof sticker pack.
We'll probably work up a set of like 13, and then give out various bits of those all the way up or whatever. So, if you've been a patron, I really appreciate it, and I'm looking for ways to say thank you. So thanks. And let's see here. Okay, so I think that covers the Patreon announcements. And of course, again, thank you, SANRIXIAN, for collaborating with me on that stuff. And yeah. So, by the way, let's let me go ahead and do something right now that we never do. I always tell people SANRIXIAN.com is where you can get all the stuff. But what kind of stuff are we talking about here? It's worth reminding you. So let me go ahead and just share my screen. And let's go to SANRIXIAN.com and have a look. Oh my goodness. Look at this Queen of Love and Beauty shirt. That is amazing. It's a sad Lyanna. And here's a sensitive, soulful man who's not afraid to rep Lyanna. See, that's the kind of dude that ladies want. You can wear dragon shirts like me all day, but ladies are looking for a sensitive man who appreciates Lyanna. So, guys, check it out. And of course, ladies, have at it. What were you going to say, Sammy?
There's a picture of Asha in that shirt and a picture of Chloe in that shirt. If you go down just a little bit to your left,
nice.
there you go.
There's Chloe.
There's Chloe and Asha is next there.
Nice.
So
reppin'.
There's also a 15% off code for all myth heads and fans and friends and family. It's
Wait, who's this guy?
That is Sean.
Sean E. Sean E, who sends in the Ritual 420 super chat. And by the way, he did send that in. Thank you, Sean E. And Emilio, I saw you sent one in earlier as well to get things started. Prime the pump. Thank you very much, Emilio. And of course, guys, if you want to send in a super chat, remember that is your chance to attach a little question and get it answered with all speed. I can be hard to get a hold of sometimes trying to get your questions answered. So that's a way to do it. But yeah, this is Sean here. Sean with his fine red beard and his North Remember shirt. I got one of those. Of course, you've seen me rock that one. We've got cool stickers like Drogon here. Little baby Drogon, isn't he cute? That's some great color on that one, man.
Yeah, they're all painted super high res. So I hope right now that I have 3x3 inch ones, but I'm going to look into options for printing them on t-shirts.
Nice.
So if you have a particularly favorite dragon or direwolf, I have 7 of each or 6 of each for you to choose from.
Here's Queen in the North. That's one of my favorite ones that you've done. And yeah, eventually we'll see Sansephone here too, right next to her. So there you go, guys. That's some of the stuff that you can get at SANRIXIAN.com. And don't forget your promo code LML. So yeah, just want to take a minute and actually show you there what kind of stuff we got. So
thank you.
Yes. And oh, wait a minute. You know what? While I'm sharing my screen, I'm going to take a minute to do a double promotion. Let's go over to Red Mice at Play, which is a fantastic blog that I've heard of. And oh my goodness, look at that attractive artwork there at the top. That really is sharp looking artwork there. That is amazing. Emma, where'd you get that?
This guy called LML. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. But yeah, he decided that my voice was so amazing that he would very, very kindly replace my generic WordPress header with some amazing fiery mice. Look at the fiery mice.
That is good looking.
So yeah. So
nice. And there's
thank you very so much.
Of course. Happy to be of service. And so take a couple of minutes and tell people what you write about over there on the blog. Why don't you do that?
Oh, okay. So I also look at symbolism. I don't do the sort of mythical side quite as much as you do. I generally focus on sort of linguistic patterns in the text, not full on linguistics though. And at the moment, I am tracing through the different colours of fire. So at the minute, I've got an essay called The Alchemist's Delight, which is gold, yellow, and green fire. And then there's an entire one just on orange fire, and I'm doing one at the moment about red fire. In there, I got distracted by some little bits and pieces, so you can also find my analysis of the Shadow Woman from the Forsaken spoiler chapter, and who I think she is, and Tobbe Mott, and a piece about how I think Melisandre actually tried to not kill Cresson, but he sort of wouldn't stop trying to kill her. So yeah.
I actually, that really struck me when we were rereading that Cresson prologue for the Patchface Roundtable. It struck me, we've all started to talk a little more about how Martin has said Melisandre is very misunderstood. And in the Melisandre POV chapter in book 5, we see that she's anguishes over Davos's lost sons and is trying to keep Devon safe so that he doesn't lose all his children. And there's a little window into that when she looks sadly at Cresson as he dies. And that is genuine sadness. It's not meant to be like some sort of ironic thing there. She honestly doesn't want to kill him. She begs him to pour out the wine at the end after she's drinking it and shown him that, like, you're not going to kill me with this. She's like, you can still pour this out. And he still does it.
Yeah, there's also a bit in there as well where you can see she's only ever mean when Cresson disparages her religion. That is the only time that she's actually mean to him. And he talks about not being tired and then mysteriously sleeps through the entire day for some reason, even though he's not been sleeping well recently. It's, there's odd little bits of behaviour there.
I never thought about that.
Yeah, so there's odd little bits of behaviour where you can think, well, I mean, she is magic, so maybe she could have done something, like put something in his wine, put something in his food, and it's so important. He's there like, I've got to save the soul of my son. Like, that's essentially his entire mantra, and then he oversleeps for it, like, when he's not been sleeping well, so yeah.
And it's even easier for me to imagine Melisandre whispering to Stannis that, like, now's a good time to go ahead and make this switch. Just let him sleep. Let's put Pylos in his chair, and we'll go forward with Pylos. It'd be very easy for her to suggest that. So,
yeah,
cool.
So,
and that's kind of the reason he wasn't summoned. It's like he's officially been retired. It's like, okay, Pylos is in now, and you're out. So, nice. And that Tobbe Mott symbolism is really fascinating. Tobbe Mott's scene is like just exploding with symbolism. He's got the hen's egg sapphire and weird and like all kinds of crap. So I definitely recommend that. That's over at Red Mice to Play. I see the link being dropped in the chat, so you guys know where to find that. And
thank you, Mods.
Right on. And very soon we'll have YouTube videos with your lovely voice, and we're all looking forward to that. So, all right, and so today,
have I frozen?
No, you're good.
Okay.
The transatlantic cable will give you a heart attack, huh? So
that will.
Guys, I invited you here. I have a confession. I invited you here to talk about the prologue. Told you we're going to read it backwards. Hold the book up to the mirror. It's very clever. Alice in Wonderland joke. But I have to tell you that we are calling an audible, which I had to explain actually to Emma that audible is in American football when the quarterback kneels behind all the big guys' butts and starts yelling out blue 42 a bunch of times. It's when you call a different play at the last second.
I just learned what that means. I thought you were referring to the software.
I was as well.
What do audiobooks have to do with this? Now, change in plans, last minute change in plans. So the reverse prologue reading episode is so mind-blowing that it blew my mind. And I thought I had it kind of pinned down, but there was a couple things that were still bugging me. And as I began to think about them more, I realized there were still a couple of things I didn't fully understand that I wanted to wrap my brain around before I put the episode out. And so instead of trying to sort of patch it together and push it through, I decided to go ahead and put that one on hold We're going to do a different scripted episode today, one which I believe will be equally exciting and hopefully not any kind of letdown to anyone. We're going to do Weirwood Compendium 7, which is called Dany and the Deep Green Sea. So we're going to pick up where we did with the last 2 episodes in the Weirwood Compendium, where we talked about the green dragon, and we basically did, showed you the under the sea symbolism. And I've actually had this episode ready for a few weeks. So when the backwards prologue was starting to give me headaches, I decided to go ahead and just roll with this episode because it was basically ready to go. So I hope you all can forgive me. But, like I said, I'd rather wait and get it right. And the prologue, there's a damn lot going on there. And so I've got the myth heads working on it. We're sort of workshopping behind the scenes, and we will come up with the answers. It's a very collaborative effort on this prologue. So for now, I will refer you back to Joe Magician's channel and his awesome prologue video and the follow-up live stream that I did with him and Bookshelf Stud, in case you didn't check that out. It's lots and lots of prologue action. And so today we are going to go back to the Green Sea, and I'm going to begin showing you all of the Green Seer symbolism with Daenerys, which is pretty cray-cray. So Finnegan's Wake fans, I apologize. I apologize. I teased on Twitter that we were going to talk about Finnegan's Wake, James Joyce's classic work of very confusing literature, and we are going to talk about that in the prologue chapter, but that is not coming today, so I apologize. But yeah, so sorry, yes, no backwards prologue today, but like I said, better to get it right than to rush it. So this will also follow up a little bit on the patch face under the sea stuff, so it'll be good. In any case, with that said, hey there, myth heads, fellow myth heads of the Starry Host, friends, patrons. It's your host, Lucifer Means Lightbringer, and when we last left off in the Weirwood Compendium 6, The Devil and the Deep Green Sea, our minds were reeling at the enormity of the Green Sea wordplay. Discovered by the one and only Ravenous Reader, of course. So this is another episode dedicated to Ravenous Reader. Thank you, Ravenous. We have to wonder, does this Green Sea symbolism really go everywhere that water goes? Lakes, rivers, oceans, ponds, drinking and drowning and bathing and melting? Do we really have to look sideways at every liquid that we come across? Well, basically, the answer is yes. But as you know, what we're really looking for is a confluence of multiple identifiable symbols and symbolic acts. Just because someone gets their throat cut doesn't mean they're manifesting Weirwood stigmata and symbolically going into the Weirwood net. But when red-headed Catelyn Tully gets her throat cut, has bloody hands, bloody tears, and bloody hair, the full Weirwood stigmata, in other words, and then gets thrown into a river named the Green Fork, and then pops up in a cave threaded through with Weirwood roots, well, we can feel confident in concluding that her death is indeed meant to symbolize the death of the Weirwood goddess archetype and her subsequent entrance into the Green Sea of the Weirwood net. Now, what actually happened is that we first identified Cat as playing the role of the Nissa Nissa Weirwood goddess figure without any of the Green Sea wordplay in mind. And that was back in the Weirwood Goddess series, which you've all hopefully listened to already. In those episodes, we discovered a whole horde of mostly red-headed women who seemed to manifest both Nissa Nissa symbolism and Child of the Forest elf woman symbolism, all of whom undergo the Weirwood stigmata. It happens so many times and so distinctively, and always amidst metaphorical Lightbringer forging scenes, that we really can't help but come to the conclusion that Nissa Nissa must have been part Child of the Forest, and that the magic ritual, which was the death of Nissa Nissa and the forging of Lightbringer, was an event which was tied to the Weirwoods, or perhaps even centered around them. Then, when we consider the Green Sea wordplay and observe Cat's body being thrown into and then resurrected from the Green Fork of the Trident, it simply confirms and enhances the conclusions that we drew from her Weirwood stigmata death scene. Nissa Nissa goes into the realm of the Green Seers after she dies. Even taking a step back from the specific Green Sea, Green Seer wordplay, it's still easy to see the classic symbolic function of the river here. Cat goes into the river when she dies and is resurrected when she's pulled back out of the river. It's like the river Acheron, which serves as the border to the realm of Hades in Greek myth, to name one example. In other words, you can see that the Green Sea wordplay is really just building upon the foundations of a classic mytheme that of the river, which represents the border between life and death. It's really just another version of the Veil of Tears. Let me hit the cough button. So besides Nissa Nissa figures getting thrown into rivers like Cat, we've also seen that many Nissa Nissa figures have various kinds of mermaid symbolism, including many of the magical or divine wives of legend, such as Elenai of the Durin Durrandon myth, the Grey King's mermaid wife, or the 2 aquatic women tied to the Andal myth of Hugor Hill / Hugo, which would be the swan maidens that Hugo sacrificed, and the woman with eyes like blue pools that the maid of the Faith of the Seven brought forth for Hugor Hill to marry. Now, as we noted last time in the Weirwood, or in the last Weirwood Compendium episode, I should say, we can even observe that Cat Tully's fish. Or let me just start over. So, as we observed in the last Weirwood Compendium episode, we can even observe that Catelyn Tully's fish symbolism that comes to her by way of her House Tully fish symbol makes her a grisly sort of mermaid or fish person, or even a catfish, if you prefer, when she is thrown into the river. She's also, we've also seen the classic sea serpent goddess archetype put into good use with Daenerys in particular, who is the most prominent Nissa Nissa figure in the series. And that's just another way of implying Nissa Nissa as going into the sea. So all of these things, the drownings, the mermaid imagery, the sea serpent imagery, they've accumulated throughout our study of Nissa Nissa figures, and they've been cluing us into the fact that Nissa Nissa has a watery side to her story, or at least her symbolism. Then when we reconsider those things with the green sea metaphor in mind, again, we just sort of see things snap into place. The mermaid and the sea goddess, the mermaid and the sea dragon goddess symbolism suddenly make a lot more sense, and they imply Nissa Nissa as a denizen of the green sea of the Weirwood net. There's yet another line of symbolism that the green sea wordplay is best buddies with, and that's the simple idea of the moon drowning in the sea. We caught on to this very early on, in the very first few Bloodstone Compendium episodes, that there is abundant and repeated symbolic evidence that at least one of those moon meteors landed in or near the sea, causing huge tidal waves and some amount of land collapse. Both the Arm of Dorne and the Iron Islands, especially at Pike, show evidence of such traumatic, sudden land collapse, and both are festively decorated with moon meteor symbolism. So this part of the moon drowning idea is fairly literal. Some pieces of the moon seem to have fallen into the sea or near the sea. After all, an impacting meteor basically has a 2 in 3 chance of striking water on Earth, and I don't imagine it's much different on Planetos. Let me just pause for a second and say that I did hit publish on the text version of this episode right before we went live. The link is in the description of the video, so all you have to do is just click the little down arrow right beneath my face, and you'll see the description of the video. It's got a link, and I'll also drop it in the chat here. I know some of you would like to read along as we talk.
Hashtag do it for Rusted.
Rusted. Rusted Revolver. Yeah, he's gonna get a whole bunch of shout outs on the Start Back episode. That's kind of his baby. So shout out to Rusted Revolver in the chat. Yeah, all that turtle violence is very disturbing, isn't it? I saw a bunch of turtle violence in social media last couple of days. I hope George hasn't seen that. In any case, yeah, it's kind of random. Sorry. So, of course, we know that the moon can be seen as an analog of Nissa Nissa, and that broken bit of moon falling from the sky and into the sea can also be seen as a representation of Nissa Nissa falling into the green sea at her death, kind of like a gigantic version of Catelyn falling into the Green Fork. Exactly like a giant version of that, in fact. So once again, we see that the green sea wordplay layer fits harmoniously with all the other symbolism that's going on already. The idea of moon meteors falling into the sea in this case, while also enhancing it. And that's pretty much where we left off in Weirwood Compendium 6, with Nissa Nissa figures drowning and dying and doing Weirwood goddess sort of stuff. We took a quick look at several of them, and then we took a longer look at Asha, or Asha, I guess I should say, because the Wayward Bride chapter is just so dank, with ocean of trees, sea of green goodness. The conclusion of that chapter was that amazing scene where Asha sees burning stags in a golden wood as she imagines the trumpets of the drowned god's hall blowing at her apparent death, and all of that following her being backed against a tree, tangled in its roots, and then struck with a lightning-like blow. Asha actually utters such things as, "Drown me for a fool," and "Splash some blood upon the moon with me" during that chapter. It's just so good. The trees as ocean quotes are equally fantastic, and they mirror the lines from Jon's scenes north of the wall at the Fist of the First Men. Now, before we discussed the drowning and bathing mermaid Nissa figures, we took a look at the dying Azor Ahai people, who seem to have a knack for dying in rivers, dying in burning boats on rivers, drowning in rivers that catch on fire amidst a bunch of burning boats, drowning on blood and wildfire, and of course, drinking from the green fountain like Arion Brightflame. Not just dying in the sea, as it were, but also being reborn from the sea, or in the sea, according to the prophecy of Azor Ahai being reborn in the sea. Just as it was with the green sea symbolism of the Nissa figures, applying the green sea lens to all of these watery deaths and rebirths simply confirms what we've already discovered by other means, that Azor Ahai essentially died to enter the Weirwood net, that his death was more of a transformation, one tied to, or more accurately, we can say that it was facilitated by the Weirwoods. That was basically the overarching topic of the first 4 episodes of the Weirwood Compendium series, and I think the evidence was already quite convincing. And then the green sea symbolism kind of just pounds the nail in the coffin, so to speak, because a Weirwood tree is like a coffin for green seers. Anyway, so today we're going to talk about Dany, Daenerys Targaryen, Daenerys Stormborn, Breaker of Chains, Khaleesi of the Great Grass Sea, and Queen of my Heart. Dany is, she's kind of the best because she combines the Nissa dying in the Green Sea to forge Lightbringer symbolism with Azor Ahai being reborn in the Green Sea symbolism, and she does it in spectacular fashion. Tracing out all of Dany's Green Sea symbolism will also find us doing a fair amount of following up on Weirwood Compendium 5 to ride the Green Dragon, because a lot of Dany's Green Seer symbolism flows through Rhaegal, her Green Dragon. We've already seen that Rhaegal, as well as Rhaego, the prophesied stallion who mounts the world, are basically fountains of Green Seer symbolism. So it figures that they'd show us some quality Green Sea wordplay, and indeed they do. When we read Dany chapters, we find such things as Daenerys, the Stormborn dragon, wearing a green dress, and a green dragon on her way to talk to old men in wooden thrones in a city by the shores of the Jade Sea, just by way of example. I have to warn you, the amount of Green Seer symbolism around Dany is shocking. Make sure you're sitting down. It's so heavy and so constant. It starts with her very first chapters and continues through all 5 books, and then ramps up harder than ever in her final A Dance with Dragons chapter, where she eats a bunch of green berries and trips. We aren't going to get to all of it today by any means. It's going to take 2 episodes to get the main stuff, and then more will be filtering into future episodes. It'll be some of it in Signs and Portals even. We've already led up to it a bit by exploring all the Green Seer symbolism of her green dragon, Rhaegal, and quick shout out, I do have a green dragon shirt on today. As well as her stillborn son, Rhaego. But when we look at the Green Seer symbolism that's directly applied to Daenerys herself, I promise you, your head will spin around and you'll want me to start making tinfoil with all due haste. Well, please, I would ask you to reserve judgment about what all this could mean for Dany in particular by now. And let's start by considering this first as commentary on the Nissa archetype. And if you're all good little children, good little myth heads, then perhaps we'll get around to speculating about whether or not her potentially significant amount of Blackwood blood might be stirring and giving her the potential to access the same magical Green Seer genetics as Bloodraven. That's right, there is precedent for a Targaryen with Blackwood blood being a Green Seer. That's right. We'll make tinfoil. Trust me. Even if you're bad little children, we'll still make some tinfoil. So before we go head over heels interpreting everything that happens to Dany in the Green Dothraki Sea as containing a hidden message about Green Seers and the Weirwood net, let's consider that Daenerys is already well established as a Weirwood goddess figure, even beyond being the mother to green dragons like Rhaegal. I'm referring, of course, to Daenerys' horse heart eating ceremony, which we covered a couple of episodes ago, as well as previously in the Bloodstone Compendium, and which you can see taking shape on your screen right now as SANRIXIAN begins to draw it. In that scene, wherein we get the prophecy of the stallion who mounts the world, which is basically the Dothraki version of the prince that was promised prophecy from a certain perspective, Daenerys has bloody hands and a bloody mouth like a weirwood tree, and she's drinking blood and consuming flesh, as the weirwoods do, both literally and metaphorically. And the fact that she's eating a bloody heart even adds the implication of a bloody heart tree, all of which makes this grade A weirwood stigmata. It's one of the best ones. Consider also that Daenerys declares herself newly impregnated with the fire of her solar king, right as she has this stigmata, matching both the Lightbringer forging mythology as well as the idea of the weirwoods being invaded and set on fire by Azor Ahai when he used Nissa-Nissa's death to essentially invade the weirwood net. So compare it to Thistle's weirwood stigmata, where Varamir's spirit literally invaded her flesh. This also depicts Azor Ahai's fiery spirit invading the weirwood tree and using Nissa-Nissa's death to get in there. So here we see Dany manifesting the stigmata and turning into a bloody weirwood tree after she's been invaded, if you will, by the fiery seed of her solar king, which is basically just a nicer version of the same symbolism. So the main point is that Dany's stigmata is no random occurrence. It occurs during a symbolic Lightbringer forging ritual, and it's consistent with all the other weirwood stigmata scenes. I take my word for it. It matches the other ones too. Let's not digress too far. But note also that this scene, like many of her best scenes in the Green Dothraki Sea, it occurs in the very first book, which implies that Martin has been weaving this weirwood stigmata, green sea type symbolism, as well as other green seer clues into the plot of his primary avatar of Nissa-Nissa from the very beginning, from the very get-go. Now that makes sense to me because we are increasingly coming to see that Nissa-Nissa's connection to the weirwoods is one of the most important aspects of the entire Long Night Azor Ahai Lightbringer ball of wax. He would have conceived of it early on, and after today's episode, I feel confident that you will agree with me that he did. So let me say thank you to Stanley Black for our intro music. Let me say thank you to Emma for reading the quotes in this episode. Let me say thank you to SANRIXIAN for drawing during the episode, including this wonderful scene, wonderfully gory. I guess it's awful, but it's still wonderful. The scene of Dany eating the horse hearts. It's tough for me because I have a weak stomach, and like when you watch those shows where it's like, you know, they give you all the really hard challenges, I always want to do the obstacle courses, but when it comes to like eating weird shit, I'm so out. I'm like, no, I give up. So I have a weak stomach. In any case, that is the end of our intro. We're getting ready to go into the first section. So let me pull up my Patreon names so we can read some names and give some thank yous. Emma, would you like to say a word?
A word? Sorry. Is that no? Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I don't have huge amounts to say. It's all Dany is all weirwoody. It's great. Super. Wow, I really do enjoy that. That's to SANRIXIAN. Your art is always extremely amazing.
Detailing out these crones now. Yeah, I was just thinking about Dany, like, because I've read Game of Thrones probably the first, like, I want to say half, like probably 15 times, because my bookmark always falls out, and I've been trying to do another reread for 2 years. So yeah, that's my life. But yeah, so after like exploring this with LML and stuff and getting into the fandom and rereading, it's so obvious, like this weirwood stigmata that's going on. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I remember, she was on top of the white lion pelt at the ceremony. And if not, for artistic purposes, that's what's going to be like in this drawing.
I do think the white lion pelt comes later.
Damn.
But I'm not.
It looks cool. it doesn't matter.
It's for art.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I definitely am okay with it.
But yeah, it's really obvious when you look back and you see it. Like, I mean, like, even on the first read, I knew Dany was some kind of connected to something in the way that the Starks were connected to their direwolves. Like, to me, it was like so obvious. I was like, oh yeah, she's got something, whatever that is. I didn't know what Greensing was at that point all the way. Like, I didn't fully understand it, but definitely.
Yeah, I absolutely adore this scene. Just in general, I went into it a bit in my Orange Fire essay because the torches are like Orange Fire.
Yep.
And I think Orange Fire is essentially just related to moon meteor symbolism. And so, like, the way the orange torches turn the blood of the horse black on the stone knives that Drogo and his blood riders used to sort of carve out the heart of the horse, with the heart, a horse also being a star in Dothraki culture. It's just like, oh my god, all of the redundant symbolism. Like, you get the sort of the black bloodstone being caused by the horse, which is a fallen star, but also the heart of a fallen star being given to the Moon Maiden by it's just like,
yeah, no, it's just such a great scene. It's so powerful. Like, I'm definitely not the first artist to recreate this scene. I feel like it's one of those that just sticks out to you just because of how visually powerful it is and impactful. And man, yes, agree.
Nice. Well, I've got the music queued up, so let's go ahead and say hello to our next section and a couple of patrons. This next section is called Sailing the Dothraki Sea, and it is dedicated to our dragon patrons, Bronze Steres of the Lily White Scales and Bronze Horns, Wingbones, and Spinal Crest, a wise old dragon who riddles with sphinxes. We've got Robin Lee Melendez, Viserys the Lightbringer, the Shadowfire dragon whose scales are dark as smoke, whose horns, wingbones, and spinal crest are the color of molten silver, and whose eyes are two black moons. As well as Falcories the Shag dragon, whose black stone scales are covered in purple and green 70s shag carpeting, and whose eyes, horns, wingbones, and spinal crest are as gray as a puff of smoke.
I absolutely love the dragon rider names. Or
There
the
we
dragon
go.
names, rather.
Yes, well, thank you. I absolutely love my dragon patrons because they give me lots of money, which I need to justify all the time I spend going crazy on this stuff. Ugh. Thank you, dragons. Appreciate it. I wouldn't be able to go crazy for free, guys. I don't have that much crazy time. Anyways, kidding aside, I am fairly flippant with the way I joke about this stuff. It's to be honest, all artists kind of dread asking for money. It's, we'd rather just make art, but we do have to do it. So I choose to do it in joking manner, but it really does come from the bottom of my heart, you guys. Every time I see a new patron sign up, it gives me a special feeling. And let me just say, actually, real quick, another Patreon thing. There has been a lot of Patreon glitches in the last couple of months. They switched their bank from America to Europe, and so it caused them to decline some pledges. I've heard about patrons having their pledges reduced to $1 without them doing so, or even having their pledges canceled, which might be connected to getting declined. So there have been I have seen a couple of things like that on mine. So if you are a patron, just do me a favor and double check and make sure you're still signed up the way you want to be. And I would just, like I said,
this happened to me personally. So I just wanted to double what you said. Just double check your account, like make sure you have your notifications turned on and everything, and that should be the easiest way to figure it out.
Right on. And we do have 195 watches, 196. Thanks, guys. I bet if like 2 or 3 people share this link on social media, we might get to 200. But I do appreciate y'all, so thank you very much. And let's go ahead and roll the next section. Sailing the Dothraki Sea. This is going to be fun. The Green Sea, reborn from the sea symbolism of Daenerys Targaryen, is immediately obvious. she was reborn in the Dothraki Sea, which is often described as green. Thanks for coming, everyone. About half of Dany's major scenes occur in this green grass sea, in fact, including her symbolic death and rebirth in Drogo's pyre, and the waking of her dragons, her starry visions in her last A Dance with Dragons chapter, and many other things that we'll take a look at today. As we know, Azor Ahai is a hero prophesied to be reborn in the sea, and if George is thinking about one specific person who fulfills all of the Azor Ahai reborn prophetic checkmarks in the most clear way possible, can only be Daenerys Targaryen, who, after all, did wake dragons under a bleeding star, and the fact that this took place in the green Dothraki Sea means that she also checks out as a hero reborn in the sea. Illyrio sums it up well when speaking to Tyrion in A Dance with Dragons.
The frightened child who sheltered in my manse died on the Dothraki Sea and was reborn in blood and fire. This dragon queen who wears her name is a true Targaryen.
Reborn in the blood and fire, or reborn in blood and fire after dying on the Dothraki Sea. So there you go. In her, the prophecies are fulfilled. She already met all the standard Azor Ahai reborn criteria there, so adding the Azor Ahai reborn in the sea aspect that Stannis speaks of just makes the alchemical wedding that much more of a home run for the rebirth of Azor Ahai. We're about to dive into Dany's first chapter in the Dothraki Sea, the pivotal Dany 3 chapter of A Game of Thrones, which, by the way, I spent 3 hours breaking down with poor Quentin and Brendan Beefish on their Not a Podcast podcast. So if you haven't checked that out, be sure to check that out on their podcast feed because, well, we had a lot of fun. And we're going to see a ton of fantastic Green Seer wordplay in this chapter today. We're gonna wring even more meaning out of it, which is always my favorite thing to do, to go back to like one of the most important chapters and just bring a whole new layer to light. But before we do that, I'm going to share perhaps definitely my favorite example of the Dothraki Green Sea wordplay in action, which actually comes from a Victarion chapter of A Dance with Dragons.
The Silver Queen is gone, the Catcher's master told him. She flew away upon her dragon beyond the Dothraki Sea. Where is this Dothraki Sea? He demanded. I will sail the Iron Fleet across it and find the Queen wherever she may be. The fisherman laughed aloud. Ha! That would be a sight worth seeing. The Dothraki Sea is made of grass, fool. He should not have said that. Victarion took him around the throat with his burned hand and lifted him bodily into the air. Slamming him back against the mast, he squeezed until the Yonkishman's face turned as black as the fingers digging into his flesh.
And then Victarion casually tosses his body into the sea, quote, another offering to the drowned god. There's actually a nice symbolic parallel going on here. The fisherman tells Victarion, the barbarian, that Dany flew away on her black dragon into the Dothraki Sea, which, of course, symbolizes both Nissa Nissa fleeing into the Green Sea and a moon meteor dragon landing in the ocean. And then Vic mimics that same symbolism by making a moon sacrifice out of the fisherman and throwing him into the sea. He lifts him up against the mast with his burned hand, with the mast being like a tree trunk, of course, and then he strangles him. And so now this fisherman has Odin hanging on the gallows tree symbolism because he's being strangled on a tree symbol. And in A Song of Ice and Fire terms, that refers to green seers being hung on the weirwood roots like Bloodraven. Then Victarion throws him into the sea and to the god beneath the waves, implying him as one who is sacrificed to the weirwoods and their green sea. The fisherman's face is turned black, just as the moon's face turns black, and the moon turns into black meteors, and his black moon face going into the sea is equivalent to black Drogon flying off into the Dothraki Sea. The poor fisherman shouldn't have talked back to Victarion, it's true. He wasn't a very good judge of character. But he was technically correct that the Dothraki Sea is made of grass. I'm sorry, I just can't help but find Victarion a little bit funny. And this scene just makes the Dothraki Sea jokes so well. It is indeed a sea made of grass, and Vic would have a very hard time sailing it with an ironborn longship. He might have better luck, though, if he were to reach further back into ironborn shipbuilding history and attempt to build a Weirwood boat, like the Grey King. That might be the right one for sailing the Green Sea, if you will. Note also the way Martin is trying to show us the Green Sea wordplay here. In the midst of the confusion about whether or not Vic can sail the Dothraki Sea, the fisherman says, that would be a sight worth seeing. The Dothraki Sea is made of grass. It's one of the many examples of Martin using both forms of sea, S-E-E, and sea, S-E-A, right next to one another in hopes that the wordplay might click in our brains. Such as when Micken, the Winterfell smith, says, the sea, is it? Happens I always wanted to see the sea. So again, shout out to Ravenous Reader, the poetess of the Nenemones, goddess of the sea. But hey, look, don't blame poor Victarion for taking things too literally. After all, not only are the plains of the Dothraki grasslands like a sea, the sea can also be like the grasslands. Quote, to the Dothraki, water that a horse could not drink was something foul. The heaving gray-green plains of the ocean filled them with superstitious loathing. That's a nice one because instead of the Dothraki grasslands being compared to a sea, it's a sea compared to a gray-green grassy plain, as though it were a grassy plain. But enough warm-up. Let's talk about Dany swimming in the Dothraki Sea. The first time we ever see the sea, if you will, is in Dany's amazing 3rd chapter of A Game of Thrones, and the analogy is laid out pretty clearly. The chapter opens with Ser Jorah talking about the sea.
The Dothraki Sea, Ser Jorah Mormont said as he reined to a halt beside her on the top of the ridge. Beneath them the plain stretched out immense and empty, a vast flat expanse that reached to the distant horizon and beyond. It was a sea, Dany thought. Past here there were no hills, no mountains, no trees, nor cities, nor roads, only the endless grasses, the tall blades rippling like waves when the winds blew. It's so green, she said. Here and now, Ser Jorah agreed. You ought to see it when it blooms, all dark red flowers from horizon to horizon, like a sea of blood. Come the dry season, and the world turns the colour of old bronze.
It's so green, she said. LOL. It's a green sea. It stretches beyond the horizon, calling to mind the green sea language of Jon's scene at the Fist of the First Men, where, after saying that the wood went on as far as Jon could see, it said that 1,000 leaves fluttered, and for a moment the forest seemed a deep green sea, storm-tossed and heaving, eternal and unknowable. This is green sea as the cosmic sea language, and it exists outside time and space, so to speak, and that's emphasized in all these quotes about it being eternal, going on as far as the eye can see, it's unknowable, all that kind of stuff. So even more important is the second part of Jorah's speech about the Dothraki Sea. It's a green sea that turns to blood when it flowers. Think about that. When it flowers, it becomes a sea of blood. Hello, moonblood symbolism. In Westeros, a woman's menstruation is known by the euphemism moonblood, and the first time she gets it, it's called her flowering, as we know. So this sea of bloody flowers is definitely a sea of moonblood. Thus, as Dany gazes out at the green Dothraki Sea for the first time, the idea of moonblood filling the green sea is very strongly suggested and even highlighted. Ultimately, this is a reference to the concept of Nissa Nissa's blood flowing into and merging with the green sea of the Weirwood net. This is a pivotal moment here, with Dany perched on the edge of the green Dothraki Sea and about to begin her journey. She's just married Khal Drogo, she's just consummated their marriage, and is now headed into the green sea. This is the basic pattern that we've been seeing with all the other Nissa Nissa moon maidens. They do some sort of Lightbringer forging ritual, and then they head into a body of water that symbolizes the Weirwood net. Dany's wedding and intercourse with Drogo gives us the Lightbringer forging ritual, and of course her wedding overlays in many ways with the alchemical wedding where the dragons are actually hatched and Dany is symbolically reborn. So this fits the pattern pretty well. There's a Lightbringer forging with the Solar King, and then Dany is off into the Green Sea. Dany's horse heart scene follows a very similar pattern, with Dany announcing her pregnancy as she manifests the Weirwood stigmata that implies her as merging with the Weirwood net. And then she even goes after that and then bathes in the womb of the world right after, which adds the aquatic symbolism. And trust me, we will be circling back to that scene fairly soon to harvest all the green seer stuff going on there. As I pop in with SANRIXIAN and check on our horse heart eating. It's coming along. It's coming along.
Yeah, I'm getting there. Getting
Nice.
into everybody's faces in the background before I finalize Dany and start painting.
Cool. I might flip back and forth and put your drawing on the screen here as I read. So just to let you know, guys, if you see it changing, it's not an accident. Anyways, another way we might describe this pivotal moment with Dany getting set to plunge into the great grass sea is to say that her foolish brother Viserys has sold her for a golden crown. This is a strong parallel to Dontos selling Sansa to Peter for 30,000 golden dragons, as both depict a foolish would-be stealer of the fire of the gods who sells his moon maiden and receives an ignominious death. We can also observe that Sansa and Dany are both sent into the sea and sold to a sea lord. Peter sails aboard the Merling King and takes possession of Sansa on the Blackwater Bay, and also carries his Titan of Bravo symbolism with him via his father's sigil, and the Titan is kind of a sea lord as well. And then Drogo is the lord of the Dothraki Sea and immediately takes Dany into that sea after they are wed, and Dany is sold. And there's also some evidence that the house with the red door that Dany stayed in Braavos was none other than the Sea Lord's palace. So a layer of symbolism there. Now, Viserys' selling of Daenerys is emphasized over and over, especially in Viserys' death scene, which we will talk about. So the parallel to Dontos and Sansa as a foolish Azor Ahai selling a moon maiden is very strong. Viserys has plenty of fool symbolism as well to parallel Dontos, as he's called a fool many times, and rightfully so. And his stubborn refusal to change into Dothraki clothes leaves his court clothes turning to, quote, rags before long. So that gives you the rag man symbolism, which is often applied to fools, sort of tied into the motley outfit idea. And then another layer to this, which I didn't put in the script, but which I'll add right now, is, and I forget who made this catch, but Dontos was shot in the chest. 3 arrows hit him, and one of them hit him in the chest, and the sigil of House Hollard has 3 golden crowns on it. And it said the arrow pierced him through one of the golden crowns. So that's actually an additional tie between him and Viserys' death. They both received a deadly golden crown for selling their moon maiden. So it's pretty tight symbolism. And if anybody in the chat, either if that's your catch or if you remember whose catch that was, then pipe in. Ravenous Reader always knows. But yeah, there you go.
It's also the left crown, which makes it sort of the sinister path, i.e. the magic path. Just to
Yes,
put that in there as well.
The left-hand path. Yeah, one time I was tracking all the wounded eyes to see. A lot of them are left eyes, but there's one that isn't. So I backed away from trying to figure that out. But maybe we can talk about that, Emma, and figure it out. Because I do think George is definitely putting in some like left-hand path, right-hand path, sort of occult ideas in there. Right? You've seen evidence for that, right? She's nodding her head. Yes, listeners. You're listening and not watching. Okay, so what was that, Sandry?
Oh, I just said I have as well. Seen a lot of left-hand path implications.
Oh, totally. I should have asked you first, I guess.
Well, I am the quote Satanist, so.
Quote unquote, witchy blood magic shit. Somebody's asking who my guest is today. I guess you popped in late. This is Storm Emma of the Red Mice at Play blog. And I'll also take this moment to say that there's been lots of complimentary comments for your reading skills, Emma, your lovely voice.
Thank
and
you.
the great voices that you're doing. So I'm seeing those in the chat. Thank you, chat. Yes, it is. Emma is definitely a pleasure to have on. So before we move on from Jorah's little speech about the various kinds of grasses, which opens the chapter, that's still what we're talking about, I'll briefly point out that this is also the oceans of ghost grass, taller than a man on horseback, with stalks as pale as milk glass. It murders all other grass and glows in the dark with the spirits of the damned passage. It's an ocean of grass, just like the Dothraki Sea, but this is ghost grass. And it's like a cross between the others, dawn, and grass. Point being, the oceans of ghost grass line can now be seen to be yet another clue about the others coming from a part of the Weirwood net, a part that they might be freezing or killing somehow, in accordance with the prophecy of the ghost grass. killing and covering the world and killing everything. And just to make sure you guys aren't missing it, oceans of ghost grass. So just like the others are seen to be coming out of the frozen lake, and their voice is like the cracking of ice, and their armor is like the images of a running on the surface of a pond. The ghost grass, which is so much like the others covering the world, it's an ocean of ghost grass. So it's just more aquatic symbolism for the others, which is, of course, like I said, tied to the idea that they're coming out of the sea. Now, after Dany shivers and says, "Ooh, I don't want to think about ghost grass," we do actually catch sight of the others. The next paragraph begins with,
"She heard the sound of voices and turned to look behind her. She and Mormont had outdistanced the rest of their party, and now the others were climbing the ridge below them."
Oh my goodness. As with most potential others double meanings like this, it's hard to know if it was intentional or not. But coming directly on the heels of Martin's choice to include the very obvious others clue of the ghost grass in Jorah's introduction to the Green Sea speech, kind of makes sense to drop little clues that, maybe the others are lurking around here somewhere in the sea. They're climbing the ridge right below them. There you go. So after the last quote, Martin immediately begins building up the contrast between Viserys, who's very much the fish out of water, and Dany, who is already adapting to the green grass sea. Irri and the young Dothraki archers are called as fluid as centaurs, which is a nice way of describing them as watery horse people. Fluid centaurs, the kind that can ride the waves of the Dothraki Sea. If you think about it, horse people that ride in the sea could be seen as seahorse people anyway, so they might as well be fluid centaurs. Then, after Viserys starts to pitch one of his usual snits, his trademark Viserys tantrum about something stupid, Dany decides not to let him ruin the day and instead rides off alone into the grass sea for fun. After a bit of flashback, recalling Dany's adjustment to Dothraki life, it's kind of a montage. We're gonna need a montage. A motherfucking montage. Which, by the way, this montage includes her dragon dream, where she is burned by the dragon fire and melted, but feels cleansed and renewed. We get some really good green sea language.
At the bottom of the ridge, the grasses rose around her, tall and supple. Dany slowed to a trot and rode out onto the plain, losing herself in the green, blessedly alone. In the Khalasar, she was never alone. Khal Drogo came to her only after the sun went down, but her handmaids fed her and bathed her and slept by the door of her tent.
So Dany is never alone. Her handmaids are always bathing her, don't you know? The dream of her being melted and cleansed by the dragon that came a page or two prior also hits on the bathing theme, which is really just one way to see Nissa Nissa's transformation inside the green sea of the Weirwood net. Instead of drowning in the ocean, she's taking a bath. It's much nicer than being tossed into the green fork with your face all carved up, I have to say. But it's the same idea symbolically, and we see that symbolism coming to life here in Dany as she immerses herself in the green Dothraki Sea. Losing herself in the green alludes to the dissolution of self to merge with the Weirwood net, I would say, hat tip ravenous reader, which is exactly what happens when a green seer dies. They lose themselves in the green sea. If Nissa Nissa went into the Weirwood net when she died, it makes sense to see her losing herself in the green, I think. And then skipping over a couple of sentences, we'll pick the quote back up.
She rode on, submerging herself deeper in the Dothraki Sea. The green swallowed her up. The air was rich with the scents of earth and grass, mixed with the smell of horseflesh and Dany's sweat and the oil in her hair. Dothraki smells. They seem to belong here. Dany breathed it all in, laughing. She had a sudden urge to feel the ground beneath her feet, to curl her toes in that thick black soil. Swinging down from her saddle, she let the silver graze while she pulled off her high boots.
Dany is not only losing herself in the sea, she's now submersing and submerging herself deeper into the green sea of grass. Pretty good stuff. There's also a line a moment later when Viserys calls Dany out for looking like a Dothraki and, regarding herself barefoot and wearing Dothraki riding leathers, Dany agrees and observes that she looked as though she belonged here in the Green Sea that she's submersed in. It's where she belongs. The natives of the Green Sea of the Weirwoods are, of course, the children of the forest and the Green Seers, and we've seen the mermaid symbolism used as a way to imply Nissa Nissa as a denizen of the sea, i.e. a denizen of the realm of the Green Seers. It's worth noting that Dany is something of a child woman at this point. Recall Illyrio referring to Dany as the frightened child who sheltered in my manse and was reborn in blood and fire on the Dothraki Sea. So Dany is a child woman who belongs in the Green Sea, if you catch my drift, or if you catch George Martin's drift. My favorite part is when she takes off her boots in order to feel the ground beneath her and curl her toes in the soil. It's kind of like a tree taking root. Nissa Nissa is the Weirwood goddess, after all, and the entire point of the Weirwood stigmata symbolism is to show a Nissa Nissa figure turning into a Weirwood tree. And just when Dany's toes start taking root in the soil, the ironborn mythology starts happening.
Viserys came upon her as sudden as a summer storm, his horse rearing beneath him as he reined up too hard.
A dragon that's like a storm. That sounds like the storm god's thunderbolt, which we think was really a meteor dragon, the one that sets the tree ablaze. Viserys is raining up too hard, like the meteor storm hard. Do you think he's raining hard? His meteors are like very hard rain. Okay, so that's about as hard as a storm god gets, I would say. And what would be great is if George would, like, I don't know, mix in some Azor Ahai stabbing Nissa Nissa symbolism and just, overlay it with the storm dragon striking the tree, just to make us all feel good and to show us that Nissa Nissa is like the tree and the falling thunderbolt meteor dragon is like Lightbringer. That'd be nice.
His hand went under her vest, his fingers digging painfully into her breast. "Do you hear me?" Dany shoved him away, hard.
Going for the breast, is it? Viserys does this to her a few times, and each time he does, it is A, sexual abuse, and B, a symbolic reference to Azor Ahai stabbing Nissa Nissa in the breast after asking her to bare her breast, which also qualifies as abuse, as I've maintained from the beginning. Here's the thing, though. The Weirwood goddess Nissa Nissa bared her breast, yes, but then got stabbed in the heart, and this bloody heart symbolism seems like yet another reference to the heart trees. So there's a heart tree reference right in the Nissa Nissa Azor Ahai myth, as you can see. This makes sense, of course, as the Nissa Nissa figures always manifest their bloody stigmata during a Lightbringer forging scene. Think of Dany eating the horse heart to get her stigmata, for example. So Dany is kind of over Viserys' bullshit at this point and shoves him away. Good for her. And then we get more ironborn mythology.
Viserys stared at her, his lilac eyes incredulous. She had never defied him, never fought back. Rage twisted his features. He would hurt her now, and badly. She knew that. Crack! The whip made a sound like thunder. The coil took Viserys around the throat and yanked him backward. He went sprawling in the grass, stunned and choking. The Dothraki riders hooted at him as he struggled to free himself.
Recall that it was the fiery lash of Khal Drogo's ghost that seemed to snake down and crack open the first dragon's egg at the alchemical wedding. That was the second egg, which cracked open with a sound like thunder. And then here in the Dothraki Sea, we have a thunderous whip cracking against a dragon, Viserys, and this comes as Daenerys was worried about waking the dragon of Viserys' anger. Instead, it looks like the foolish Viserys has gotten a little more fire of the gods than he bargained for in a preview of things to come. The whip coils around his throat like a noose as he chokes and struggles for breath, sprawled out on the grass of the sea. Then he's on his knees like a sacrifice or praying man, and it says...
Drogo gave a pull on the whip, yanking Viserys around like a puppet on a string. He went sprawling again, freed from the leather embrace, hit a line of blood under his chin where the whip had cut deep.
That's a red smile for Viserys, a Weirwood sacrifice symbol to go along with his hanging by whip. Then we get a clue about Viserys as someone who is rejected or spit out of the Weirwood net, as with Dany pushing him away a moment earlier.
He was a pitiful thing. He had always been a pitiful thing. Why had she never seen that before? There was a hollow place inside her where her fear had been.
Hollow, like a tree that people can live inside. Or maybe like a moon egg whose dragon has been woken, perhaps, and is only now an empty shell. Then as Dany condemns him to walk behind the Khalasar, Dany asks Jorah if he'll get lost. And there's talk of waking dragons and even waking the dead.
Jorah laughed. Where else could he go? If he cannot find the Khalasar will most surely find him. It is hard to drown in the Dothraki Sea, child. Dany saw the truth of that. The Khalasar was like a city on the march, but it did not march blindly. Always scouts ranged far ahead of the main column, alert for any sign of game or prey or enemies, while outriders guarded their flanks. They missed nothing, not here, in this land, the place where they had come from. These plains were a part of them, and of her now. I hit him, she said, wonder in her voice. Now that it was over, it seemed like some strange dream that she had dreamed. So, Jorah, do you think he'll be so angry when he gets back? She shivered. I woke the dragon, didn't I? Sir Jorah snorted. Can you wake the dead, girl? Your brother Rhaegal was the last dragon, and he died on the trident. Viserys is less than a shadow of a snake.
Okay, so a bunch just happened. Jorah ironically says it's hard to drown in the Dothraki Sea because it's actually implied, and I call this ironic, because it's actually implied that a green seer or a skin changer can indeed drink too deeply of the green fountain and lose yourself, or as they say in the TV show, stay too long under the sea. So ultimately, Viserys drowns in molten gold on the Dothraki Sea. So there you go, he does drown. Then we get the all-important line about the plains being a part of the Dothraki and now a part of Daenerys too. The Green Sea is a part of Nissa Nissa, just as Nissa Nissa looks like she belongs in the sea. The sea is a part of her now because she only goes into the sea after forging Lightbringer and undergoing death transformation. And after that, Nissa Nissa is the sea, and the sea is Nissa Nissa. But now that it's over, this whole event in the green Dothraki Sea seems like some sort of strange dream Dany had dreamed. Yikes. Dany is dreaming the Green Sea, like a green dreamer. And once again, we're presented with the idea that the Green Sea itself is like a dream that exists inside the mind of Nissa Nissa, that the Weirwood net itself can be thought of as the mind of Nissa Nissa in a sense. It compares very well to Asha Greyjoy, dreaming of the burning wood that contains the black burning stag and the fiery hearts after she played the role of a tree woman Nissa Nissa getting sacrificed against the tree with that lightning-like blow. The woods that is like a sea exists in the dream of Nissa Nissa. I mean, it's popping up again and again. In fact, Daenerys herself is quite the dreamer just in general. Everything she needed to know to wake the dragons basically came to her in dreams. Now, perhaps Quaithe was helping a bit, but the point is Dany has a ton of visionary dreams, basically more than anyone. Dany's historical Targaryen namesake, Dany's the Dreamer, foresaw the doom of Valyria, and in fact made enough prophecies to fill an entire book, which George will be releasing after Fire and Blood and before the Winds of Winter. Or maybe not. But in any case, that book of Dany's prophecies is the one that probably includes the prince that was promised prophecy. So Dany's the Dreamer is most likely an echo of Daenerys Targaryen and reflects the important role of dreams and visions in the arc of Daenerys and, of course, Nissa Nissa, who dreams the Green Sea. And I will stop and say T-minus 1 minute until tree time. Yes, and I will also point out Rusted Revolver made a great catch a second ago in the chat. He says, this might be something that we've already noticed, but the World Book section on the Targaryens is called The Reign of the Dragons. Meteor Storm! I cast moon meteors! Nice. Reign of the Dragon. Nice.
Pew, 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 pew.
So, Sanri, let's check in with you and tell us how it's going right now.
I'm trying to draw a horse heart. Got some reference pulled up. I realize in the scene that she's actually staring into Khal Drogo's eyes, like as she eats the heart, but I wanted to put him back there. So this is where we're at so far. Gonna do color pretty soon.
Well, that just means that we, the viewer, are Khal Drogo.
Yes.
That's cool.
Awesome.
Oh, is that a blue tiger sighting?
Yeah,
Wait,
there was a
what?
blue tiger sighting.
Where? Ghostgrass. He says in Dante's Inferno, Canto 34, souls of the traitors trapped in the frozen icy lake of Cocytus. How do you say that one? Do you know anybody?
You read it.
Cocytus. Let's say it that way. Cocytus. It's probably Cocytus, but in any case, they are visible as grass blades in glass. Wow. Okay. That's quite the find. So yeah, that's where Ghostgrass comes from, definitely. So in Dante's Inferno, the people that are trapped in the icy lake with Lucifer look like frozen blades of grass in glass. That is the Ghostgrass glowing with the corpse light, if anything is it not?
Yeah, that just, yeah.
I mean, that's barely even modified. Wow.
Yeah.
Nice one, Blue Tiger.
Thanks, BT.
Wow, I don't know if you've got your computer in yet or if you're still plugging away on your backup computer, but that was a nice find, buddy. Glad you're still plugging through it. He says, here's the verse. I was now, and with fear I set it down in verse, where the shades were wholly sealed, and yet showed through below like straws in glass. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Very nice. Good job, Blue Tiger.
Very nice.
Let me grab a post 420 drink here.
Yeah, I think Blue's got quite a lot of ideas in the work from all the
Definitely.
books that he's got reading to do on at the minute. He's A Song of Ice and Fire paralleling the lot of them, and there's quite a few on the go at the minute. He was doing the, oh god, I can't say it, Aeneid.
Iliad?
No, well, the Virgil's.
Oh, yeah, right.
That one.
Yeah, I can't say that either.
Yeah, as well as Dante's Inferno. So he's got quite a lot.
Yeah, and he's
a lot
brilliant.
planned.
Big shout out to him.
Yep. Oh,
You're
and
muted,
Disputed
Luce.
Lands has dropped the link in there. So thank you, Amanda. Lucifer, you're muted.
Lucifer means mute bringer.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I see the link to the Amber Compendium popping up in the chat. That is Blue Tiger's blog. And of course, you can just search for Amber Compendium and find it. So I recommend that. And the cool thing is that he did an Advent calendar series last year, and he's doing it again this year. He's going to do daily mini tweets with some Lord of the Rings, A Song of Ice and Fire crossover symbolism, which is, of course, his specialty. And they will be links to longer essays that he has written or is writing. So if you are a Lord of the Rings fan and you have not checked out the Amber Compendium, you have a big, giant, shiny Christmas present waiting under the tree for you to unwrap and enjoy. And so I will send you over there. And Blue Tiger's got some big things planned for next year. He's actually from Poland and translates a lot of my essays into Polish for the Polish fan community over there. But he also writes his own stuff, like I said, on the Lord of the Rings, Song of Ice and Fire crossovers. And he's going to be putting out a lot of stuff next year, just waiting for that computer to come in the mail. It's been delayed for weeks, but anyways, hang on there, Blue Tiger. So getting back to our script here. We've got Dany dreaming the Green Sea, yes. So after Dany pronounces all of this a dream, she then asks Jorah if she might have woken any dragons. And Jorah asks her if, in return, if she can wake the dead. This is great, Weirwood Goddess, resurrecting the Night's Watch green zombies talk. The green zombie watchmen always have that fire dragon symbolism, just like the burning scarecrow brothers in Jon's dream, or like Beric, the fiery scarecrow knight with a burning sword. So waking dragons and waking the dead are the same thing when we're talking about it in the context of the Weirwood goddess resurrecting the Green Zombie Night's Watchman. And she does that from inside of the Green Sea, from inside of the Weirwood net, after she's died and merged with it. And that's what we see here with Daenerys talking about waking the dragon, and Jorah saying, oh, can you wake the dead? Jorah's referring to Rhaegar as the dead dragon, but it's actually Rhaegar's son, Jon Snow, who is the dragon in need of resurrection. And that will, of course, be accomplished with the help of a different Weirwood goddess figure, Melisandre. So we're going to have a very similar thing where we've got a Weirwood goddess figure raising the dragon from the dead. And of course, that's also just another version of the triple goddess raising the horned lord from the dead to bring the spring. So a lot of good overlapping symbolism there. Now, on top of that, we even get a throwaway line about Rhaegar dying on the trident. As we know, Dany's naming of Rhaegal the Green Dragon after her brother's death on the green banks of the Trident acts as a kind of symbolic resurrection for Rhaegar. And it happens right here in the green Dothraki Sea, a la Azor Ahai being reborn from the sea. In fact, we're right about to talk about all the rascally green dragon stuff a bit more in just a second, because I actually had to save all the good Rhaegal Green Sea stuff until after I unveiled the Green Sea wordplay. So we did that whole To Ride the Green Dragon essay, highlighting Green Sea symbolism in Rhaegal, or Green Seer symbolism in Rhaegal, but we didn't actually talk about the Green Sea metaphor because we hadn't unveiled it yet. So now we're going to go back and talk about Rhaegal some more. We're going to see even more Green Seer symbolism, and that makes sense because we already know that the green dragon motif is basically all about Green Seer dragons. So it makes sense that George would hide some Green Sea chicanery in his scenes, and indeed, that's what we find. So just to finish off the chapter, I will inform you that we have a bath, a real one this time, with soap and water. Soap and water. It's totally tame. There's no symbolism at all. And oh, wait. No, this is the bath where she hears the story about the moon cracking to give birth to dragons. So we better take another look. So after Dany's confrontation with Viserys, and a bit of frank conversation with Jorah about the chances of Viserys ever retaking the Seven Kingdoms, which, spoiler alert, they're not very good, Dany rides away, eventually arriving at her tent, which has been pitched by a spring-fed pool, of course. Just, triple up on the symbolism. So here she takes a hot bath, and her handmaidens tell her about that old second moon that wandered too close to the sun. This is but one of many parallel Dany bathing scenes, and this is kind of the best one because she symbolizes a drowning moon maiden as she hears about the destruction of the second moon, which was scalded and cracked open like an egg. We know this scene very well as it's the centerpiece of my very first theory, but now we can see all the intense Nissa in the Green Sea symbolism that actually leads up to it and frames it. Pretty fun, huh? This chapter starts with a ton of green grass sea symbolism, which is all about Nissa immersing herself in the Green Sea of the Weirwood net, and finishes with a comparatively mundane metaphor of a moon maiden taking a bath. But they're really both the same metaphor. And pretty much any time Dany takes a bath, we get symbolism tied to the death of Nissa and the moon and the waking of dragons, the forging of Lightbringer, and so on. And once again, I'll remind you that also in this chapter, Dany dreams of being bathed in dragon fire and all of her blood and flesh is boiled off, and she feels cleaned and refreshed and renewed. So it's basically like triple bathing and cleansing symbolism going on here. So now let's go ahead and check out Daenerys swimming like baby beluga in yet another iteration of the Green Sea, this time with her green dragon at her side. And oh yes, Wiz the Smith pipes in that the tent that she enters is called out as a hollow hill. Yes, they talk about the tents. I forget the exact line, but there is a direct comparison to the caves in the hollow hill and the tents there. So it's very much that type of thing. And inside the tents that we find later, like when Dany miscarries Rhaegal, we hear that there's a smoke hole in the top of the tent, which I assume is a standard feature. So that gives you the whole celestial cosmic axis because the rising smoke and ash column is the symbol of a burning tree. And so we've got the tent, which is like a hollow hill. It's got the axis rising up to the stars. And that symbolism is played upon a couple of times in other scenes. So thanks, Wiz the Smith. Always glad to have you in the chat piping in. Mythheads are a community. And believe me, these essays that I'm writing would not be nearly as good with all the mythheads, without all the mythheads contributing. So thanks, Wiz. Let's do a Sanri check-in. And Emma, if you've... I always like to ask for a little bit of feedback after the section. It's nice for me to take a break and nice for you to get a word in that isn't just reading. So what do you think, Emma? And I will switch the screen over to Sanri as well.
I just, in general, completely agree with pretty much everything that you wrote. And I was also going to bring up what Wiz the Smith said about the tent as a hollow hill. Like, a lot of tents that you see all over the place, just tents everywhere, including knights' pavilions. Tents frequently have a lot of green seer symbolism. So, like, Renly's tent of, or like Emerald Castle tent thing is another one. And
that one's even alive with light too. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And has sea armor in it, green sea armor with Catelyn's face as the drowned pool. So you've got additional stuff there. And tents are also described as popping up like mushrooms as well elsewhere, with like, the idea of,
nice.
Yeah. So tents and anything that happens in a tent, just take a close look at it. Obviously it's not perfect, but it's very close. Jon as well, like when he's got his little black cape as a tent, but then emerges into the magical ice dawn. Like they're all over the place. So
nice. I smell a little bit of an addendum to this section coming before the podcast comes out. And let me say that that is one of the reasons why I do like this new format, where I perform the new episode live first and then edit that down into the podcast and put it out a couple days later. I know it might be inconvenient to wait a couple days, but it allows me to integrate any last second catches that the myth heads in the chat or my guests on the show find. And there's always one or two that I can then work back into the script, and I can record a little section and cut it in with my expert audio editing skills. And it'll be seamless, and you never know that it didn't happen live. And then it's that much stronger. So very cool. Yeah. So the tent thing is awesome because, like you said, we've got the smoke hole, and if they're popping up like mushrooms, which I totally remember that one, then that gives them additional mushroom cloud symbolism. So that's nice, because the whole mushroom cloud ash tree thing, it's like, it's really clear to me, but it's pretty fucking esoteric, like as a riddle. And I always wonder about that one. I'm like, is everyone understanding that? As I tried to pound it out in A Grove of Ash, which is one of my favorite episodes, but it's cool to get more confirmations like that. Something that's clearly a Weirwood symbol that has the rising smoke symbol, inside of which we get a ton of Lightbringer forging symbolism. It's also like a mushroom. So nice. Thanks, Emma. Thank you. Dany looks pretty determined there, man.
She is hungry.
You got to get your game face on to eat a friggin' horse heart, I got to say.
Right? Like,
well, I mean, sorry, go on.
No, you go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, Emilia Clarke was saying about the jelly heart. Like, that was difficult enough. Could you imagine, like, an actual muscly, like, gristly? Oh, my God, no.
No, thank you.
Just no.
No, thank you.
Determined.
Yeah.
Oh, and also remind you with the WordPress pages, you know, WordPress is kind of a social media network. It's not a very good one, but there is a function where you can subscribe to WordPress blogs. And if you click the subscribe button, you can subscribe by email. And that means that when Emma puts out a new essay, or when I put out a new essay, you'll get a little email notification. So do take the time to do that when you visit the Red Mice at Play blog. Hit that little subscribe button and make sure you're subscribed to Lucifer Means Lightbringer blog. It just gives you one more way to, you know, make sure you know what's up. So let me go ahead and cue up some music. Get some more patron names to read.
Patron names to read.
Oh, we're gonna do the Long Night's Watch this time. These are my boys. This is my crew.
Hey there.
If you join the I see. Wait, no, I think
Long
you're.
nights, boys. I was just making a joke. Never mind.
I have you as one of the guardians of the galaxy. Yes, you're a guardian of.
Grade.
No, that's the level that you're at. Which that's the one you jumped to, because it used to be Sacred Order of the Black Hand, and now you're the guardian of the Celestial Galley, which is the Weirwood submarine.
Makes sense.
It does. It's pretty damn good synergy.
Makes perfect sense.
And you're also, of course, rider of Zulfric the Black Beast.
Yes, my dog.
My dog. That's my dog. All right, so let me go ahead and read some patron names. And this next section will be called the Jade Empress Nissa Nissa. Yes. The Jade Empress Nissa Nissa. This section is brought to you by our Long Night's Watch patrons: Sharon Ice Eyes, Dread Ferryman of the North, wielder of the Staff of the Gods, a Weirwood staff banded in Valyrian steel. By Sinxia, Frozen Fire Queen of the Summer Snows and Burner of Winter's Wick. By Blue Raven of the Lightning Peck, the Frozen Thunderbolt, whose words are, "The way must be tried." And by the Smiling Wolf, Stephen Stark, Lord Stephen Stark of the Broken Tower, Jedi of Just Ice, he who awaits the Corn King. Nice. Stephen Stark. All of our friends, friend to the entire community, Stephen Stark. Thanks, dog. Appreciate it.
He's truly a gem.
Disputed Lands piping in with the typically Stephen Stark 666 donation. That's cool. Yeah, that's you, buddy. That's right. That's you with your long hair and your blue flower crown. I know you've got a Leanna SANRIXIAN shirt, right, Stephen? If you don't, you better get one.
He does. He does.
All right. I was about to say.
He looks great in it. As soon as
that is a given. That is a given.
Yeah.
Well,
He's a very handsome gent.
In fact, this is going to be worth 2 minutes. 1 second. Bleep, bloop. Bleep, bloop, bleep, bloop. Folks, when you buy horns, you post a picture of yourself with horns, you just might end up on Starry Wisdom Church. There's Stephen Stark. Look at that. Look at that. Wearing a SANRIXIAN shirt. Got the blue rose crown and a fine set of antlers. That is, that's compelling, isn't it? That's stirring, even. All right, there you go. I'll stop embarrassing Stephen. Thanks, though. Appreciate your support there, buddy. And of course, Stephen, like I said, is a champion of the community, so he deserves to be embarrassed a little bit. And watch out for us myth heads at Con of Thrones with our antlers and horns. We're hell in the hallway, especially when there's two people passing by. In any case, the Jade Empress Nissa Nissa. Folks, don't get too excited by the section title. I am not starting new tinfoil about a hidden line, the Gemstone Emperors, or the Gemstone Emperors, or anything like that. This isn't about bloodlines. We're still firmly planting our feet in the realm of the Green Sea symbolism, and we're going to talk about the Jade Sea, and about Jade, and a lot of Dany stuff in Qarth. So there you go. What I'd like to do next is to tie the Green Sea symbolism to Rhaegal the Green Dragon, which is going to be very easy. I think you're going to like this. As we know, Rhaegal was born amidst blood and fire on the green Dothraki Sea, just as Dany was reborn there. We know that the cracking of his green egg was like thunder, like the storm god's thunderbolt that struck the tree, a Weirwood symbol, and that the burning logs with secret hearts exploded as his egg hatched open, yet another heart tree symbol. We know that he was named for Rhaegar, who died on the green banks of the Trident, a river named for the weapon of a sea god. We've already seen that the green of Rhaegal's scales can be described as the green of moss in the deep woods at dusk just before the last light fades, which, now that we look at it again, contains a deep wood motte reference. since it's the moss in a deep wood at dusk. That's good because the ocean-like forest of Deepwood Motte was full of greenseer and greensea puns. Of course, the green of moss in the Deepwood description of Rhaegal's scales, an egg, also matches the exact description of the eyes of the greenseers, or green dreamers like Jojen. And this is yet another clue about greenseers hidden in Rhaegal's symbolism. But there's another description of Rhaegal's green scales in A Dance with Dragons, when Dany goes down into the pit beneath the pyramid of Meereen, the Great Pyramid of Meereen, with Sir Barristan, and it leads us back to greenseers as well pretty quickly.
Rhaegal wore matching chains. In the light of Selmy's lantern, his scales gleamed like jade.
And our stream is gleaming with over 200 viewers. Thank you, everybody. 209. My heart is going pitter-patter. Thanks, guys. Anyways, so this is not the only time that Rhaegal is associated with Jade. When the Tourmaline Brotherhood of Qarth gives her a three-headed dragon crown, the heads are made of jade, ivory, and onyx for the colors of her three dragons. And another time in A Clash of Kings, there's a line about Rhaegal's jade green wings, which gives us the magic number of 3 jade references for Rhaegal. So why is jade important? Well, thinking back to Melisandre's voice being flavored with the music of the Jade Sea, and how Jade Sea could be translated as green sea, and that makes Melisandre one who sings with the flavor of the green sea, which makes a ton of sense. Comparing Rhaegal's green to jade is akin to likening it to the green of the sea. Remembering that he was called a green serpent and that his egg has a deep green shell, he's basically a jade green, deep sea serpent. He also compares very well to Renly's armor that we just talked about, which was like a deep green pond, but also a deep green wood, with the gold fastenings gleaming like distant fires in that wood. Pretty sure there is some fire lurking beneath Rhaegal's forest green, jade green scales, it is safe to say. The 2 descriptions of the scales of the green dragon, in other words, both allude to green seeing. They look like the green of moss on a trees, like the eyes of green seers, and like the green of jade, which alludes to the Jade Sea, aka the Green Sea. The other major thing that Jade calls out to in A Song of Ice and Fire is the Jade Demon, aka Wildfire. Wildfire, as we've just discovered in the last Green Weirwood Compendium episode, is also part of the Green Sea symbolism, just like the Green Dragon and the Sea Dragon. Aegon the Unworthy's wooden dragons were filled with the Jade Demon, for example, and those Jade Dragon demons set the Kingswood on fire and gave us burning trees. Dragons themselves are like demons, and they come from Asha on the Jade Sea, and Rhaegal, the Jade Green Dragon, is full of fire, which is also mostly yellow and red, or which, although is mostly yellow and red and orange, is sometimes laced with green. So we've got actual green fire happening. Then at the Battle of the Blackwater, we saw a 50-foot tall Jade Demon hatch from a boat full of wildfire, which is a nice combination of the burning ship as sea dragon symbolism and the Jade Demon wildfire symbolism, rising from the sea. So in terms of green sea or dragon symbols, we have the sea dragon, we've got the green dragon, and we've got green wildfire. And they're basically all interchangeable. They're all getting at the same idea of a dragon green seer with similar combinations of symbols. They're just sort of shuffled around a bit. And they often appear together with one another. And Rhaegal is tied to all of them. So the fun really begins when Rhaegal, the Jade Green Sea Dragon, goes to the Jade Sea. Well, they go to Qarth by the Jade Sea. It's amazing how much Rhaegal hogs the spotlight in these scenes by the Jade Sea, I have to say. But before we get to that, let me briefly introduce the Jade Sea itself, because, you know, you might think I'm being overly eager by saying that the Jade Sea equals the Green Sea, simply because jade is usually green. Well, ye of little faith. Let's start with a fun Easter egg, which lumps the Jade Sea in with some pretty notable companions and actual green seeing. Oops, it looks like it was right in the first book. Almost like George, I don't know, planned ahead or something.
He lifted his eyes and saw clear across the narrow sea, to the free cities and the green Dothraki sea and beyond, to Vaeus Dothrak under its mountain, to the fabled lands of the Jade Sea, to Asha by the shadow, where dragons stirred beneath the sunrise.
That was, of course, from Bran's Coma Dream vision in A Game of Thrones. And you'll notice the Green Seer, Green Sea wordplay is worked in very nicely. Bran is actually and literally using his fledgling Green Seer ability here. And in this vision, he green sees across the narrow sea, and then to the green Dothraki Sea, and then to the Jade Sea. I mean, that's enough Green Sea wordplay to overwhelm even Ravenous Reader. Just kidding. A Ravenous Reader has an infinite threshold for wordplay. This I can say for a certainty. But here's one even Ravenous Reader might have missed. The dragons are stirring beneath the sunrise. Stirring like a latte or a smoothie. Who's thirsty?
Or a free sea tea.
Or what?
A free sea tea. As in free cities. Free
oh,
sea.
oh God, man.
Bam.
Always one step ahead of me. In any case, these are water dragons we're talking about. They're stirring. I kid. But, I mean, I don't know if that one's really intended as a sea dragon clue. Maybe, maybe not. But seeing across the narrow sea to the green Dothraki Sea and then to the Jade Sea while actually green seeing, that is not an accident. That I can assure you. And once again, we see the suggestion of there being a link between the dragons and the dragon lords from Asha by the shadow and green seers. Said another way, Bran imagines himself in the green dream, and what is he doing? He's imagining dragons. I can make Imagine Dragons joke because the bass player for Imagine Dragons actually uses a Brimstone audio distortion pedal, which, by the way, is the very small guitar pedal company that I work for. So,
heck yeah.
There you go.
Imagine them dragons.
Imagine Dragons, brimstoneaudio.com. So, dragons always exist in the Green Sea and inside the dreams of the Green Seer. I think that's one of the messages here. So, Dany loves to dream of dragons more than anyone else. And in her Wake the Dragon dream, she also dreams of her ancestors from the Great Empire of the Dawn, which were discussed at length in our joint episode with History of Westeros. Episodes, plural. We did Housestane Part 2, and then Asha, and then the Great Empire of the Dawn, which, by the way, are some of the most popular episodes ever in History of Westeros history, Aziz tells me. So, yeah, those are good ones. Thanks, guys. And thank you, Aziz. Those were the ones that put me on the map. That was like my first appearance on YouTube ever. Fun times. Fun times. So in any case, Dany dreams of these Gemstone emperors, right? There was eight listed rulers of the Great Empire, and they're all named after gemstones. We get the names of 8 of them in the World of Ice and Fire. But 4 of the gemstones of those 8 appear in the eyes of the kingly ghosts in Dany's dream. In the dream, there's only 4 gems listed. They're opal, amethyst, tourmaline, and jade. And those are 4 of the 8 gemstones of the Great Empire. So these ghosts, these kingly ghosts, they've all got silver gold hair, and they've got flaming swords, but they each have eyes according to these 4 gems. So the one with amethyst eyes, obviously, makes for a model Valyrian. But what do we call the Dragon Lord ghost with jade green eyes? I mean, that would be a green dragon. And since the jade is found in the eyes, it's literally a green seeing symbol that's being created here. So this is a green seer Dragon Lord. It's pretty interesting. And I guess you could say that now tourmaline comes in all different colors, but one of the most common colors is a nice crystalline light blue. So there might even be like an others Dragon Lord clue there. But it's tough because tourmaline, like I said, it comes in black and yellow and pink and all kinds of colors. So let's see. Okay, so now I've seen in the chat some of you have mentioned the sea green emperors. Oh, I've impressed Rusted Revolver. That's a lot. He's like, wow, that's cool, LML. It takes a lot to impress Rusty there. So yeah.
100 points to your house.
In any case, I found a kind of Easter egg companion to the Jade Sea Dragon concept in the world of Ice and Fire, which I see a couple people in the chat catching on to. And it does indeed bring us to the shores of the Jade Sea in the Empire of Yiti. There's a little sidebar section that gives us a long list of various Yitish emperors of note from various dynasties, which are named after different colors. And there we read of the sea green emperors. I wonder if George hit any symbolism there. Let's take a look. Their name may have been taken for their dominance at sea, for we are told that the 6th, 7th, and 8th of the sea green emperors,
under whose rule the empire reached the apex of its power. Jahar conquered Leng. Jar-Jok took Greater Morag. Jar-Han exacted tribute from Qarth, Old Geese, Ashai, and other far-flung lands, and traded with Valyria.
Real quickly, I see a question in the chat that I'm going to answer. OMG Jimmy Boy asks, why doesn't Bran have green eyes if he's a green seer? Well, because we're actually only told that it's children of the forest green seers who have red or green eyes. We are not told that human green seers have that. Jojen does have green eyes. He's actually not a green seer. He's something less, like a shadow of a green seer. He's called a green dreamer, where he gets these dreams, which may just be implanted by a Bloodraven for all we know. But the point is that we actually, that line about red and green eyes is specifically talking about children of the forest. And it's often people get confused about that. So Bran does not need to have red or green eyes. And Bloodraven probably has red eyes because he's an albino. So, or an albino, as Emmett would say. So that's that answer. And the fact that Bran has blue eyes, you better believe that is something that will be built on symbolism wise. So in any case, the quote that we just read, I'm just going to go ahead and look it over it again. The point was that Jarhar conquered Leng. Another one conquered Great Morag, which is an island. Leng is also an island. They exacted tribute from Qarth, Old Gis, Ashai, and other far-flung lands, and traded with Valyria. So in other words, all of these conquests would have had to have been made by sea, because many of them are islands and many of them are very far away. So these sea green emperors were indeed skilled sailors who basically ruled over the Jade Sea. They expanded Yiti's control to the entire Jade Sea. So this is a perfect green seer metaphor. The sea green emperors rule the Jade Sea. Even better is Jarhar, the sea green emperor, and his conquest of Leng, and had to appear to Colin Longstrider, the 8th spoke of the wandering wheel, for this find.
Legends persist that the Old Ones still live beneath the jungle of Leng. So many of the warriors that Jarhar sent down below the ruins returned mad or not at all, that the God Emperor finally decreed the vast underground city's ruins should be sealed up and forgotten. Even today it is forbidden to enter such places, under penalty of torture and death.
If you've listened to my Old Ones segment on Ideas of Ice and Fire's YouTube channel, you know that I associate Leng and the Old Ones with the Horned Lord mythology, because the Horned God is called the Great Old One, and for other reasons. And these haunted caves certainly seem like the familiar Greenseer Cavern Hollow Hills symbolism, Hatip Wizardsmith, with a nod to Gendel and Gorn's legend of being lost in the caves. And who is sending soldiers down into these caves? The sea green God Emperor Jarhar. One has to wonder about the idea of sealing up the Weirwood net as a potential solution to all the problems of magical imbalance in the story. I mean, that might make a certain amount of sense. It's kind of a topic that we could really just go into, as a whole discussion, but it seems like there's a hint here. They sealed up the caverns on Leng, so there might be clues about a no magic ending. Thanks a lot, Marie of Aus, sending in a super chat. A thank you, super chats. Your content is thorough and your efforts more genuine. I hope you get more of these. Thanks, Marie. I appreciate it. hit the cough button real quick. Hang on. So, and by the way, I am going to be following up that old ones. That was basically, I teased the first half of an essay on that Ideas of Ice and Fire episode. And I'm going to write the full thing up and show you all about the old ones. It's going to be the closest thing to tinfoil that I've put out yet. So that'll be fun. In any case, now sitting astride the Jade Gates, which provide entrance to the Jade Sea, is, of course, Qarth. And when Dany, the sometimes sea dragon, goes there, we find things worth talking about. So let's go there. In particular, there is some heavy symbolism going on with the pureborn that pertains to sea dragons and green seers both. To begin with, Daenerys is going to the pureborn to seek boats to carry her and her dragons and her army back to Westeros. She's seeking sea dragon boats, in other words, just as the boats which eventually carry her away from Qarth are named after the dragons and all the rest. In order to do so, she dresses in green and makes herself a green dragon.
Rhaegal hissed and dug sharp black claws into her bare shoulder as Dany stretched out a hand for the wines. Wincing, she shifted him to her other shoulder, where he could claw her gown instead of her skin. She was garbed after the Qarthine fashion. Aaron had warned her that the enthroned would never listen to a Dothraki, so she had taken care to go before them in flowing green samite, with one bared breast, silver sandals on her feet, with a belt of black and white pearls around her waist.
So notice the black and white pearls. Pearls are very distinct moon symbols in the real world and in A Song of Ice and Fire. So this implies black and white moons or black and white moon meteors. This makes for a great complement to the green dress because she's wearing the colors of her dragons, black, white, and green, and it matches her crown. And she's also telling us a story about green dragons and the two moons. Pulling the palanquin are two bulls who are black and white, one black bull and one white bull, which again suggests a white moon and a black moon, since we think of Mithras slaying the white bull, bulls generally being lunar symbolism, unless they are a fiery bull, in which case they might be something else, but I digress. So to cap it off, Rhaegal, the green dragon, perches on Dany's green dress. It seems that she brought the green dragon with her to see the pureborn, only the green dragon. It's one of those double symbols where Dany wears green and is thus a green dragon herself, but then she also wears the green dragon like a garment. And then Dany is also calling out to the Amethyst Empress and Nissa here as well. The naked breast of Qarthine fashion seems to me, and a clear allusion to the tale of Lightbringer's forging, where Azor Ahai told Nissa to bare her breast to the sword. And that actually, guys, this might be an in-world thing, like not just a symbolic nod, but you think about it, the Azor Ahai myth is a legend in the East, and Qarth has a lot of ties to very ancient mythology. They're the ones that have the moon cracking to birth dragons myth. So their tradition of dressing with one bared breast might literally be done in remembrance of Nissa. And that, by the way, is a hat tip that belongs to someone on the internet a long time ago whose name I cannot recall. It's one of those really old forum finds, which I don't even know who to attribute it to, but it's not my find. Somebody noticed that a long time ago. So there you go. Now, just before that paragraph, it says,
Dany's tight silver collar was chafing against her throat. She unfastened it and flung it aside. The collar was set with an enchanted amethyst Zaro swore would protect her against all poisons.
So this works very well as a parallel to Mel's ruby choker necklace, which also seems to protect her from poison that we saw in the Clash of Kings prologue. But of course, an amethyst is more appropriate for Daenerys, the Amethyst Empress Reborn. Trademark Durran Durrandon. And hat tip Durran Durrandon, who is, of course, one of our Zodiac patrons. He's the Pisces patron, Redfish Bluefish, and also a very old forum friend. So in any case, returning to the pureborn themselves, we find green seer clues. A lot of them, actually. As you just heard, they are also called the enthroned, and enthroned is the word used for the singers enthroned on their weirwood thrones in Bloodraven's cave. And the pureborn even have old wooden thrones.
The pureborn heard her pleas from great wooden seats of their ancestors, rising in curved tiers from a marble floor to a high domed ceiling painted with scenes of Qarth's vanished glory.
So great wooden thrones of their ancestors. I mean, that's a pretty good description of greenseer thrones, right? Thrones which literally contain the spirits of a greenseer's ancestors, as well as every scene of vanished glory in the history of humankind, and then some.
Descendants of the ancient kings and queens of Qarth, the pureborn commanded the civic guard and the fleet of ornate allies that ruled the straits between the seas. Dany wanted that fleet, or part of it, and some of their soldiers as well.
So there's another emphasis on their very old blood. And we learn that they command the fleets, the boats that Dany wants to make sea dragons. So they're old men in thrones commanding sea dragons. And then there's one final greenseer clue that comes after describing the way in which each wooden throne was bedecked with jewels, including jade. We read,
Yet the men who sat in them seemed so listless and world-weary that they might have been asleep.
They're dreamers in wooden thrones. They rule the Jade Gates, which give entrance to the Jade Sea. They bestow sea dragons upon seekers, or not. Dany's role here is of one seeking to be a green dragon, and although she is denied, she does ultimately get her fleet of 3 sea dragon boats. And again, remember that she named them after Aegon's 3 dragons, just to make it really clear, that carry her to her next destination, with her dragons diving in the water like sea dragons all the way. And if you remember, that was Rhaegal and Viserion that were coiling up like a metal ball and then splashing into the water. That's something that we quoted way back in Weirwood Compendium 1, where we first talked about the sea dragon thing. So real quickly, one of my, I won't even call her a mod. She's a content creator, Amanda Crowfood's daughter of the Disputed Lands. She is also doubles up as one of my best mods and is always quick to drop the links in. She's heading out of here, so let me just say thanks, Amanda, for all your great modding. And it looks like Amanda has a new video coming out next week. That's exciting. So check out the Disputed Lands YouTube channel if you have not already. The links will be dropping in the chat in a second. And of course, all you have to do is just search for the Disputed Lands. So there you go. In any case, Dany is making her way through Qarth in Xaro's palanquin with the black and white bulls, wearing her black and white pearls and her green dress. And while she's doing so, she's having this conversation about the pureborn with Xaro. This is after she's left the pureborn. She's been denied, and she's basically telling the story to Xaro. And then we get another green dragon green sea clue.
She stroked Rhaegal. The green dragon closed his teeth around the meat of her hand and nipped hard. Outside, the great city murmured and thrummed and seethed, all its myriad voices blending into one low sound, like the surge of the sea.
So basically what's happening here is that Daenerys is a green dragon by virtue of her green dress. She's wearing her green dragon, and now she's navigating through a surging sea. Rhaegal and she are both sea dragons now, and similarly, Rhaegal sniffs the wine and hisses, which provokes Xaro to say that he has a good nose and that they should sail to the Jade Sea to get some really good wine, presumably wine that the green dragon might approve of. I just love that. I mean, it just shows you like the sense of humor that George has. Like, he even implies like, yeah, he doesn't like wine unless it's from the Jade Sea. I mean, I don't know, it's great. In any case, I'll also point out the last line of the quote that we just pulled. Myriad voices blending into one low sound, like the surge of the sea. So not only is it implying a sea, but this line speaks of the hive mind that's made up of all the dead singers, the myriad voices of the singers, which makes up the Weirwood net. which we are calling the Green Sea. So it's a really nice hive mind metaphor there. And we saw something similar at the Battle of the Blackwater when the drums that were beating on the ships merged into one great heartbeat. And I called that out as a hive mind reference as well. So, and by the way, I think that's a Ravenous Reader catch. She's pretty hip to the hive mind stuff. So I'm just going to keep shouting out Ravenous Reader. All this Green Sea stuff flows from her brain. I mean, guys, think about this now. Like, we've had the Patch Face Roundtable, we've had the last Green Sea episode, we've had this episode, and literally these would not exist if Ravenous Reader hadn't have found the Green Sea discovery. So this is why I say, like, I said it a long time ago, this is one of the greatest discoveries in the fandom. And I think now you're beginning to see why. Like, it's pretty fucking sparkle tits unicorn poop. I mean, I don't know. It's great stuff. Is it not, Emma?
Oh, it's absolutely amazing. Like, and we're barely scratching the surface so far. And there's already, like, what, about 8 hours of content so far just on this. And, like, this is the tip of the iceberg. It's absolutely stunning. And then, like, obviously Amanda's doing all her ironborn research as well, and the disputed lands. So everything that she's doing, that's all got under the sea wordplay. So yeah, there's just so much. It's insane.
And Raven Salix, you are a mod, which gives you the power to drop links in. So go ahead and dig up your killing word essay, and please drop that link in the chat here, and I'll even throw it in the YouTube description afterwards. That's one of her kind of seminal essay works on Westeros.org, and it's another really powerful metaphor that I've brought it up a couple times. The idea that, like, a magical spell can be like a sword, but I'm really going to harp on it when we get to the episode about horns and Nissa Nissa's cry, because we know Nissa Nissa's cry can be symbolized as the sword Widow's wail. And we know that Dragonbinder's scream is like a sword thrust that splits the air. So there's a lot of words become swords wordplay that's going on. And that's another Ravenous Reader tip. And also, I guess I got to give Seams some credit too. Seams from the Westeros.org forums, who I never seen totally eye to eye with, but is brilliant nonetheless and made some great discoveries, including the words equals swords wordplay. Of course, all you have to do is add an S to the word words and you get swords. So there you go. In any case, always good to take time to give people credit. So where were we? We've got the myriad voices blending into one sound like the surge of the sea. So there's another curious call out to the great empire of the Dawn in this sequence as well. Dany is asking Xaro for ships, and he's listing all the things which he has already given her, including those black and white bulls, whose horns are inlaid with gemstones, by the way, just to be extra fancy, because Xaro is very fancy and very not heterosexual, by the way.
True.
Yeah, totally. I love that. It's one of the less subtle ways that Martin shows you we have a gay character. It's like Dany has her breast out. It's like Xaro never glanced at it, like not tempted at all. He's like, marry me. And Dany's like, yeah, you weren't looking at my boobs. So yeah. In any case, Dany says, so Xaro's listing all the things he's given her, including the bulls. And Dany says, yes, but it was ships and soldiers I wanted. And then a moment later, she says, but my bullocks cannot carry me across the water. So even though they're lunar bulls, they're not sea dragons yet. They still represent moons in the sky, because sea dragons could, of course, carry Dany into the sea where she wants to go. So Xaro has also given her 1,000 knights in shining armor from a long time ago. But they're miniature knights. They're tiny statue knights in armor of gold and silver. And they were made of jade and beryl and onyx and tourmaline, of amber and opal and amethyst. And setting aside the beryl and the amber, we now actually have 5 out of the 8 gemstones of the rulers of the great empire of the Dawn listed here, including the 4 specifically named in Dany's Wake the Dragon Dream: tourmaline, opal, amethyst, and jade. So there's 1,000. Yeah,
Sorry,
go ahead.
can I just hop in here?
Absolutely.
So I had a bit of a look at beryl and amber, and beryl, the colours that it's mainly found as are emerald green or aquamarine, which gives you sea symbolism in the beryl, the green sea symbolism, and then amber, of course, is like petrified tree sap that traps things, which is like just weirwood sort of labyrinthine stuff. So I thought it's interesting that that's sort of included as well.
Trapped in the weirwood.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, one thinks of Jurassic Park, of course, and the mosquito trapped in amber. But amber is also a symbol of fire of the gods and things like that. And it's like a gold thing that comes from trees. So yeah, you can definitely see that amber's got some great symbolism. And then what did you say about beryl? Did you say something about beryl?
So the colours that it's most frequently associated with are sort of like an emerald green colour and then aquamarine. So you've got your sea green colours as well.
Ah, got you. Nice. And so, yeah, that's some pretty good gemstone trivia. And of course, another place we see all the gemstones of the Great Empire appear is in Illyrio's rings. I think he's got like 7 out of 8 of them. And he's got a tiger's eye, which makes you think of Tiger Woman too. So, and Illyrio is the one that sends her the ships that become sea dragons. So you can imagine Illyrio as very much a parallel figure to these the enthroned, the what are they called? Fuck, I forgot.
The pureborn.
The pureborn, right. So they command the sea dragon ships, and they've got all the gemstones. And then we've got Illyrio with all the gemstones on his fingers. He commands the ships too. And he's like a yellow whale. So he's like a sun god that's in the sea. So in any case, he's got the forked beard like a devil.
He's also dead. He's called a dead rotting sea cow by
Oh, it's like my favorite line in the whole story. Like, oh, a drunken dwarf. A rotting sea cow. It's like, can we get some more of that? Oh, wait a minute. It's time for a Sanri check-in. Woo!
I mean, I drew Illyrio as a sea cow. Do you not remember?
I do. I totally. That was in the Weirwood submarine. Yeah.
We've got color, folks.
Color. Oh, it's looking great. You haven't added the blood yet, of course, but everything else is coming to life.
Last.
Yeah, of course.
You know, yeah, getting everybody's skins and shadings in right now. But yeah, what do you think?
Amazing.
Oh, thanks.
Yes, and by the way, the Killing Word essay link is in the chat now. And again, I'll add that to the description. That, just to be clear, that is like required mythical astronomy reading. Like if you like mythical astronomy of Ice and Fire, there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't read that essay. It's definitely canon in my mind, and it's a powerful metaphor that's all over the damn place. So everybody that's watching this or in the chat right now, go read it and you will thank me.
I highly recommend it as well.
So. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward, and it's one that appears in the prologue. It's one of the best examples. Here's a little prologue, since I promised you guys prologue. So Will climbs the tree, right? Waymar is left alone to fight the others. Will climbs the tree. He puts the knife in his mouth, and then he says a prayer to the nameless gods of the wood. And the next sentence, the others appear. And the others are described as faceless in that very chapter. So what's being suggested here is that Will, implied as basically bitter against Waymar, says a prayer to the gods of the wood, and then the others emerge from the dark of the wood. So essentially, Waymar is implied, not Waymar, I'm sorry, Will up in the tree is implied as summoning the others with the killing word. And the fact that he has the knife in his mouth right after he prays shows you like his words are literally like knives. And then the others show up like swords and kill Waymar. And Will is implied as complicit because he does not warn Waymar. So that is a little sample of the killing word. It's all over the place. Anytime the king says kill somebody, that's basically like a picture of the killing word. And Nissa Nissa's cry is what kills the moon. So that's shows you that. Anyways, go read the essay. So there we go. I love shouting out my friends. My friends are the best. You myth heads are great. So I'll pop back in after we've got some bloodshed, Sandra, but say something if I go too long. And by the way, we did cross the 200 viewers threshold a few times. We're at 195 here now, but just want to say thanks to everybody. So hope I'm keeping you entertained. It's not the prologue, but it's fun. So we've got the knights with the gemstones. All right, so we've got lots of call outs to the Great Empire of the Dawn. And by the way, Qarth is almost like, I feel like this was George's way of incubating some of the Great Empire of the Dawn ideas. It's possible that all the way back in a Game of Thrones, before he had fleshed out everything in the East, that he was thinking of Qarth as basically like an echo of the Great Empire. We see a lot of Gemstone Emperor stuff and a lot of, if you remember when Dany's in the House of the Undying project themselves as these glorious people in armor that's set with gemstones, and they offer her to teach her the speech of dragons, and they say that they sent the comet to show her the way. So to me, I've always thought about this as the Undying basically projecting to Dany like their best memory, their best reconstruction of what these gemstone emperors might have been like, because they think that that will sort of appeal to Dany. They will come across as like her predecessors, her ancestors. They're not exactly like the gemstone emperor kingly ghost that she sees in her dream, but it seems pretty similar. And I think the Undying of Qarth are definitely like trying to project themselves that way. So essentially, you know, as George goes on, he fleshes out the backstory. But to me, Qarth is like basically dripping with these echoes of Asha, the ancient dragon lords from Asha, who would eventually become the Great Empire of the Dawn. So,
well, the World Book mentions Qarth in the same breath as Yeati and Asha. Like they're all listed as like the same, from the same era, from the same place, or remembering a sort of. So it seems to be that the World Book's sort of suggesting that they're all Great Empire of the Dawn cities.
Absolutely, yep, that's a good point. And it's interesting that we don't get much on Qarth in the World Book. Kind of makes you wonder if like there's a little something left. There's another gun left to fire as far as a little mystery going there.
Yeah, but, I wanted to do an essay on it actually a while ago when I was trying to research like Qarth, and I was like, oh, there'll definitely be a section in the World Book. Wait, there's not? What? Oh my god, this means it's really important. So that's sort of where my mind's gone with that, but that got put on the back burner a while ago. So yeah.
Nice. Well, I'll look for. I'm sure you get around to it at some point. That sounds like a good one-off. Yeah, kind of like the Tobo Mott thing. So, oh, and by the way, I did do a stream with In Deep Geek last Thursday. It was a really good stream. It was like a 3-hour stream. We talked about the Lannisters for about 2 hours, although of course we jumped off into some pretty cool stuff. And then we talked about magic swords and Dawn for like 45 minutes at the end. So if you did not catch that, you should go check that out. That's on the In Deep Geek YouTube channel. And if you don't subscribe to In Deep Geek, then, well, there's another Christmas present for you, because this is one of the best YouTube channels on YouTube. It's one that I never miss an episode of. I love Robert's work. He's kind of like Aziz in that, like, he's got that really strong investigative eye, very logical mind. And when he puts his attention to a subject, he basically rinses and washes it and wrings it out. And like, I finished watching it and I'm just like, damn, yep, okay, there you go. That's it. So check out In Deep Geek. And that was like, I don't know, I've been sick for 5 or 6 days, and like last Thursday was the first day I had felt good, and I was kind of in the zone a little bit. So it's really smoking episode. If you haven't caught it, definitely catch that. So anyways, I see a super chat from KT Main saying not on Patreon yet. So here's me throwing money into the church collection plate. Thanks, KT Main. Appreciate it. And if you have a question you want to ask, then hit it up. So getting back to the quote. We have the jewels. That's right. Zaro gave Dany 1,000 knights. They're made of gold and silver, which someone pointed out are the 2 primary elements of alchemy. And they're made of jade and beryl and onyx and tourmaline, of amber and opal and amethyst. That gives us 5 of the gemstones, in particular the 4 from Dany's dream. And so 1,000 sword-like things, the miniature knights with swords, would generally seem to be a symbol of the meteor shower of 1,000 dragons, which can be like falling swords. And the gemstones, gemstones of all kinds, are equated with stars at times. So these miniature knights also have pretty strong meteor shower symbolism, but they're decked out in the trappings of the Great Empire of the Dawn. And of course, that makes sense, because Azor Ahai seems to have come from the Great Empire of the Dawn, and he's the motherfucker that caused a long night. So there you go. Now, perhaps best of all, just as Dany is pointing out that the bulls are not ships and cannot carry her across the sea, the palanquin is forced to come to a halt, because the crowd has stopped to ogle at, wait for it, a fire sorcerer. Yes, a fire sorcerer. And it is 4:20 now, Central Time. That's right. This is where the fire mage appears to climb the fiery ladder. I always think of the Batman, the Adam West Batman music when I think of climbing. You know, they shoot it sideways and they're climbing up the building with their capes. Like, anyways, hopefully everyone knows what I'm talking about. So that's it. Dany has come to the fire sorcerer. It's the fire mage, which appears to climb the fiery ladder. And then Quaithe of the Shadow appears to tell Dany that her dragons have made magic stronger in the world. The path of the green sea dragon leads to a fire sorcerer, in other words. A shadow sorcerer from a shy thrown in for good measure. So here's the actual quote, because it is worth pulling.
Drogo rode back to her. A fire mage, Khaleesi. I want to see. Then you must. The Dothraki offered a hand down. When she took it, he pulled her up onto his horse and sat her in front of him, where she could see over the heads of the crowd. The fire mage had conjured a ladder in the air, a crackling orange ladder of swirling flame that rose unsupported from the floor of the bazaar, reaching towards the high latticed roof.
Be right there. Be right there. All right. So we have discussed before the notion of Odin riding a shamanic horse to journey through the cosmos when we were talking about Yggdrasil. And we're actually going to go a lot further with that topic in the next Weirwood Compendium episode when we discuss Sleipnir, which is also a kind of astral projection horse that Odin rides. Sleipnir is famously a gray horse, and Dany just so happens to ride a gray horse all around the green Dothraki Sea. So it's going to be a fun episode. And actually, it started as a part of this one, but it got too long, and so I chopped it in half, yada, yada, yada. In any case, we can see that symbolism at work here, as Dany mounts a horse to see, just as Odin mounted Yggdrasil, his gallows horse, to see the runes. And instead of runes, although we have seen a red priest make fiery glyphs in the air, Dany sees the mage and his fiery ladder. And the key line here is the latticed roof. The word lattice or lattice work is always a lattice work of stars keyword in A Song of Ice and Fire. Take it from me. So this fire mage climbing his ladder towards the lattice is signifying just what you'd think. He's trying to use fire magic to ascend to heaven. So of course, he disappears upon reaching the top. And here I'll give a hat tip to Stone Dancer, the mind's eye whirlmaster of the trident, and photographer extraordinaire for the latticework find. Nice job, Stone Dancer. So then, right after the fiery ladder happens, Quaithe appears.
When the fiery ladder stood 40 feet high, the mage leapt forward and began to climb it, scrambling up hand over hand as quick as a monkey. Each rung he touched dissolved behind him, leaving no more than a wisp of silver smoke. When he reached the top, the ladder was gone, and so was he. A fine trick, announced Drogo with admiration. No trick, a woman said in the common tongue. Dany had not noticed Quaithe in the crowd, yet there she stood, eyes wet and shiny behind the implacable red lacquer mask. What mean you, my lady? Half a year gone, that man could scarcely wake fire from dragonglass. He had some small skill with powders and wildfire, sufficient to entrance a crowd while his cutpursers did their work. He could walk across hot coals and make burning roses bloom in the air, but he could no more aspire to climb the fiery ladder than a common fisherman could hope to catch a kraken in its nets.
So Quaithe is playing the role of an undead Nissa Nissa inside the Weirwood net, very like Stoneheart or the ghost of Highheart. At least that's my analysis. Quaithe wears a red lacquer mask, which is also referred to elsewhere as a painted wooden mask. Now we kind of see what's going on here. This mimics the carved red faces on the Weirwood trees, which are like wooden masks for the green seers inside. Quaithe contacts Dany in dreams and visions in a way that is very much parallel with Bloodraven and Bran. And of course, she is from Asha, representative of the hot hell underworld, which seems to be inside the Weirwoods. In this scene, her eyes are wet and shiny, hinting at the sea that lies behind the Weirwood mask, perhaps. And look, she's making deep sea analogies. Welcome to the club, Quaithe. Before the dragons were reborn into the world, this mage could no more hope to ascend the fiery ladder than to catch a kraken in its nets. It's pretty hilarious because Azor Ahai climbing the fiery ladder to the stars and entering the Weirwood net is akin to the Weirwood net catching a sea monster or a sea dragon. Kraken arms are likened to tree roots in a couple of scenes, and so the idea of a kraken in a net seems like George making his own Weirwood net joke here. One thinks of Sam, the Night's Watch brother, and his black Leviathan symbolism when he comes up out of the well at the Night Fort and he's flopping around in a puddle of moonlight whilst ensnared in Mirareed's net. You might also think of Rhaegal the Green Dragon getting ensnared in a net of chains atop the pyramid and then brought down into the underworld. And Ponderous Reader says, hey, Mythheads, just saying how much I like Emma's reading voice with the super chat. Nice job, Emma. You're making me money. Good job.
Thank
Way to
you,
go.
Ponderous Reader.
Make sure you subscribe to Emma's blog and, share
Follow me
it
on Twitter.
Yeah, follow her on Twitter at EL Smith something or other. What is it?
1994. At EL Smith 1994, because I'm really imaginative with my Twitter handle there.
You're a baby. You're a babe in the woods.
Baby.
And I'm an old man who's not putting his birthday in his email address anytime soon. God, I'm old enough to feel that way. Actually, I really don't care, but good to have you, Emma.
I feel you. I feel you loose.
Kiddo.
Oh. Sorry, I got excited by the art.
Oh, boy. Yeah. All right. Let's take a look at that. That is getting gory.
We're getting there.
And folks, this is the Weirwood stigmata. Look at it. You can really see it. Bloody hands like the Weirwood leaves, bloody mouth like the maw of the Weirwood. We've got the bloody heart to suggest the heart tree. It's great. And then she's like, oh, a prince rides inside me. I'm pregnant with the fire of the sun god. It's just great. And we haven't even begun to talk about the stallion who mounts the world. I just started teasing you with the whole astral projection horse Sleipnir thing. Well, let me just get back onto the script because I'm going to talk about this. I'll leave the drawing up though. So let's step back, look at the sequence here. George shows us several versions of Dany as a dragon in the Green Sea, from entreating the pureborn on their wooden thrones to sailing through the sea of people on her palanquin, to the very fact that all of this happens within smelling distance of the Jade Sea. And then we get a bunch of dragon waking and fire of the gods, Lightbringer forging symbolism at the end. So just as Dany's third chapter, immersing herself in the Green Sea, ended with the story of waking of dragons from the moon, this voyage through the various seas ends with a fire mage ascending to heaven and Quaithe discussing the reemergence of dragons and magic to the world, and specifically mentioning the alchemical wedding where Dany hatched the dragons. So whether it's the green Dothraki Sea or the Jade Sea, or just a nice hot bath, Dany is going swimming, it's safe to say. And Steph thank you for the super chat. And it looks like House Kraken Tacos. Oh, that's Ponderous Reader. Used to be House Kraken Tacos. Anyways, so Quaithe is actually delivering us a message about Nissa Nissa's death, enabling Azor Ahai to climb the fiery ladder into the stars here. I hope you can see that. Quaithe is literally telling Dany that this fiery mage would not have been able to scale the ladder to the sky before she birthed the dragons, meaning that her moon death and dragon birthing ritual is the thing that opened up the doors to heaven for Azor Ahai. This is entirely in keeping with the Weirwood door symbolism. Nissa Nissa is a door through which Azor Ahai enters the Weirwood net, where he can do astral projection and fly amongst the stars. Nissa Nissa's magic is what makes it possible, and in particular, her death and transformation is what makes it possible. Now we see much the same implication right at the alchemical wedding, where Dany's Lightbringer bonfire creates a smoky stallion that Drogo can ride into the stars.
I'm so excited to read this. It's just fire colours everywhere. Okay. Nice. Another step, and Dany could feel the heat of the sand on the soles of her feet, even through her sandals. Sweat ran down her thighs and between her breasts, and in rivulets over her cheeks where tears had once run. Ser Jorah was shouting behind her, but he did not matter anymore, only the fire mattered. The flames were so beautiful, the loveliest things she had ever seen, each one a sorcerer robed in yellow and orange and scarlet, swirling long, smoky cloaks. She saw crimson fire lions and great yellow serpents, and unicorns made of pale blue flame. She saw fish and foxes and monsters, wolves and bright birds and flowering trees, each more beautiful than the last. She saw a horse, a great grey stallion lined in smoke, its flowing mane a nimbus of blue flame. Yes, my love, my sun and stars, yes, mount now, ride now. Her vest had begun to smoulder, so Dany shrugged it off and let it fall to the ground. The painted leather burst into sudden flame as she skipped closer to the fire, her breasts bare to the blaze, streams of milk flowing from her red and swollen nipples. Now, she thought, now, and for an instant she glimpsed Khal Drogo before her, mounted on his smoky stallion, a flaming lash in his hand. He smiled, and the whip snaked down at the pyre, hissing. Oh, cough
Nice.
button moment.
Yep. Well done, Emma. Thank you. And a double thanks to Emma because, of course, Emma, like everyone else, thought I was going to do the prologue episode, whose script I had sent her several days in advance so she could read over the quotes she was going to be reading. And then this morning I was like, hey, Emma, so about that prologue. Not so much. And then I sent her this one at the last second. So she's doing this really without any prep. And she is fucking knocking it out of the park. Thank you, Emma. So really appreciate it. All right. So now hat tip to Unchained Westeros the Great for first spotting this gray smoky stallion as Sleipnir way back in the days of Westeros.org forums before, well, a long time ago. Let's put it that way. So this is the gray astral projection horse. And again, we will go to town on astral projection horses in the next episode. But you can see the definite parallels to the fire mage scene in Qarth here. We see the fiery sorcerers appear in the flames, which is a match to the fire mage climbing the ladder. By the end, Drogo himself has become a fiery sorcerer. He's mounting the gray stallion made up of fire and smoke, the one which rises like a mushroom cloud from the Lightbringer bonfire where the moon dies. Now we know that the Dothraki believe that their valiant dead become the stars in the sky, a fiery Khalasar riding through the Nightlands, through the celestial sea of space, if you will. Drogo is identified with the red comet by Dany. So what's happening here, according to the Dothraki beliefs and Dany's perceptions, is that Drogo is riding this smoky stallion into space, where he then rides the red comet as his celestial stallion. And all of this is enabled by Daenerys and Drogo combining to create the alchemical wedding bonfire in the Green Sea, just as the fire mage in Qarth is only able to climb the fiery ladder because Dany has brought magic back into the world by creating the alchemical wedding bonfire. So now, of course, we know that Dany becomes Azor Ahai reborn herself after the alchemical wedding, and accordingly, she shares the same astral projection and comet riding symbolism that we see with post-death transformation Drogo. For example, we see Dany riding Drogon, just as reborn Drogo is perceived to ride the comet. We see Dany riding her gray horse with a mane like silver smoke in the Green Sea, just as reborn Drogo rides the gray smoky stallion. And at the end of the Green Dragon episode, we dropped that, and that was Weirwood Compendium 6, by the way. We dropped that quote about touching the comet that I'm going to keep quoting until we can fully wrap our brains around it.
Across the tent, Rhaegal unfolded his green wings to flap and flutter a half-foot before thumping to the carpet. When he landed, his tail lashed back and forth in fury, and he raised his head and screamed. If I had wings, I would want to fly too, Dany thought. The Targaryens of old had ridden upon dragonback when they went to war. She tried to imagine what it would feel like to straddle a dragon's neck and soar high into the air. It would be like standing on a mountaintop, only better. The whole world would be spread out below. If I flew high enough, I could even see the Seven Kingdoms and reach up and touch the comet.
So inspired by the Green Dragon's attempt at flight, Dany muses. If she could just fly high enough, she could see better and even touch the comet. This passage to me really reads a lot like Bran's vision of flying over the world and seeing the dragons beneath the sunrise in Asha, and then all the way to the heart of winter in Westeros, I have to say. That's something that we're going to see more and more of as we continue to follow Dany's Greenseer symbolism, a convergence with Bran's symbolism. I mean, stands to reason, right? Many have already picked out Dany's House of the Undying experience as running very much in parallel with Bran's Weirwood pace session in Bloodraven's Cave. And I'm here to tell you that this is where it starts, not where it ends. This is, however, where this episode ends, as going any further with the astral projection horse ideas will lead to another 10,000 words, easy. We've just done about 12,000 words. And we've covered a lot of ground today in the simple idea of Daenerys manifesting so much Greenseer symbolism. And please stop and consider just how much we've seen in the last 2 hours. It's a stunning revelation in and of itself, which gives us a lot to discuss. So thanks for joining me, and I will see you again soon with Weirwood Compendium 8, The Silver Seahorse.
Hooray!
Hey, and there was much rejoicing.
There was much rejoicing.
Hey.
Yay!
Cool. Well, we are going to keep going just a little bit longer, since anytime I've got a guest on who's as smart as Emma, I feel bad, obviously, just having you read the quotes. So let's take 15, 20 minutes and talk about it. We're at 2:38, so we'll go to 3, and we'll take a couple questions from the chat and kick around some of these ideas. So Emma, go ahead and give me your thoughts. And I still got the camera on Sanri. And then after we get your thoughts, we'll flip it over to Sanri, see what she has to say, and talk about this friggin' awesome painting that's happening in front of our eyes here.
So the first thing I wanted to mention was, I hope you guys spotted it, was the last quote that I read. So it says across the tent. So again, you've got the tent symbolism cropping up in relation to Drogon wanting to fly, and where Dany mentions wanting to reach out and touch the comet. So there's sort of the additional
perfect.
stuff.
Right, of course. That's where you need to be so you can ride the smoky stallion or the ash tree up to the stars. Nice.
Yeah. And this has just been sort of the Green Sea symbolism. Like there's also like actual skin changery stuff. Like for instance, whenever Dany's in the Dothraki Sea and wearing Dothraki clothing, it's all leather. So that's all skin changing symbolism as well, which is sort of another layer to sort of Viserys sort of reaching in and like assaulting her. It's sort of going inside her skin. So it's sort of another invasion style thing.
There's a lot of heart-eating talk elsewhere too. In particular, doesn't Varamir like eat the heart of Hagon after he?
Yeah.
Right. So that's directly associated with sort of ancient ideas about cannibalism, like taking somebody's power by eating their heart or their brain or something like that. That's kind of what it feels like.
Is Heart Eater
Heart Eater? The sword Heart Eater.
The sword that he makes, Joffrey makes Sansa kiss. Is that the one? So then she's essentially sword swallowing, as in eating a heart, which then has some horrific horn blowing implications. Keep
it PG, chat. Keep it PG.
Yeah,
keep it PG.
I had to mention it.
By the way,
it's my trademark.
I rest in peace to Johnny Fox. Johnny Fox is a sword swallower extraordinaire who for years performed at the Maryland Renaissance Festival, which has existed for years and years. It's one of the best Ren fairs in America. I went there as a kid year after year. If you live in the Northern Virginia or Maryland area and you've been to the Ren fair, it was probably the Maryland Ren fair. And Johnny Fox, he's this comedian sword swallower guy. Every year he was there. And I just have so many fond childhood memories listening to Johnny Fox. He always made a ton of sex sword swallowing jokes. But the thing is, I was too young to get them when I was there. So it was only later as an adult thinking back, I was like, oh, he was making dick sucking jokes. Oh, I get it now. When you talk about meeting me out back and this and that. Okay. So anyways, he died in the past year. So there might be like one person in the chat. Shout out. If you know Johnny Fox, the sword swallower, friggin' say something in the comments or the chat, just so I can know that I'm not the only one. But in any case, sword swallowing. Yeah, good stuff. Sorry. So yeah, Emma, go ahead.
I think that the sex joke as sword swallowing thing is something that George is riffing on though, because whenever you hear the word deep throated, it's entirely in relation to either antlers piercing someone's throat being cut, someone's like burying a sword in someone's throat, or related to a horn blast and blowing a horn. So those are all really related symbols, and if you just check it out on a search of Ice and Fire, you'll just see hella mythical astronomy symbols just appearing everywhere. So that's something unrelated that I thought I'd throw in there because that's my brand. Just
look, here's I can see where this is going. After I finish, I'm gonna finish Signs and Portals, and I'm gonna finish another series probably about all the battles. I can feel a battles compendium taking shape, where we look at all the fight scenes and the battle scenes that seem to be fights within the Weirwood net to try to figure out like what this confrontation is about. But eventually, and this might be after TWOW comes out and we analyze that for several months, eventually there's going to be the cesspool compendium. It's going to be completely R-rated. Every episode is going to have a disclaimer, be like, do not listen to this around your children, as some people do. And we're going to talk about the cesspool and poop and butt sex and sword swallowing and fucking the unicorn and all that shit. It is coming. God damn it. I've been trying to hold back. The flood from you guys, but George went there, and ultimately, after I've exhausted all the other symbolism that's more pleasant to talk about, we will talk about all that fucking crap because it's in there. Damn it. Painkiller Jane, Ravenous Reader, Princesses of the Cesspool, Princesses. Yeah, we figured that out the other day too. Sanri, thoughts on the episode?
I thought it was really good, really easy to follow. I mean, like, I agree mostly exactly with everything you said. I really like Dany's green tear symbolism, and I like how obvious it is on the reread and when we re-go through it. But yeah, I mean, I'm just really into this horse heart right now. Sorry, I'm not more.
No,
that is amazing.
Yeah, no, definitely no apologies needed. I like one thing I've noticed is like when you do faces at first, you quick sketch them, and they always look like a little angular and harsh at first. And then as you fill it in and finish it, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, that's really good. That's a really good face. It happens almost every time. I just noticed that about your sort of.
I like doing things like this because you can kind of like see my process. So for all of our fellow artists out there, like they might be able to learn something or steal one of my techniques or something. But yeah, I always just lay out like a base face kind of deal, and then I try to individualize as I go along. So obviously these are Dothraki, so I'm trying to make them all similar looking, but also unique, if that makes sense.
Yep, I'd say all the skin tone of the Dothraki needs a darkening shade. I don't know if you were getting there, but
oh yeah, I'm not done with the colors yet. But
right on, yeah, they look a little too close to Dany, obviously.
Yeah.
But I like how you gave Dany a little bit of a swell of a pregnant belly there. That's cool.
Yeah, that was hard. Never drawn a pregnant woman before.
Yeah, she's only a little pregnant, but that's cool.
Yeah, I mean Rhaegal's strong, and she's small, so
nice.
I will finish this up soon, I'm sure. Liking it so far. I think I captured the ferocity I wanted in her face there.
Definitely did.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Definitely did. Somebody says dick jokes are timeless. Yeah, the caves are timeless. Dick jokes are timeless.
It's true.
There's no doubt. There's no doubt. So cool. Yeah, I've been looking at Dany Greenseer symbolism for a long time. Even before Ravenous unlocked the Green Sea stuff, I found a little bit of it. But it was really after that it really, because it was the astral projection horse stuff that I had caught on to first. But once Ravenous Reader started talking about the Green Sea, you think about the Green Dothraki Sea, and then again at the end of A Dance with Dragons, she eats some green berries and then just trips her nuts off and like sees Quay's face in the stars and stuff, and you start to see like, oh shit, okay, there's something going on here. And eventually, and that was also before I figured out that Nissa Nissa was the whole Weirwood goddess stuff. So it was after the Weirwood goddess happened that then I really started to understand like, oh, okay, all this Greenseer symbolism around Dany is probably talking about Nissa Nissa. But the thing is, she's got a lot of Blackwood blood. She does. I mean, at least. So what happened is Egg married Betha Blackwood. They had kids. I'm sorry. Yeah, so Egg's mother married a Dane, or Egg's father married a Dane. Maekar married a Dane. So Egg is half Dane and half Targaryen. And again, genetics doesn't work like that, half and half. But he's got one Targaryen parent and one Dane parent. Then Egg himself marries Betha. Okay, so now their kids have a good amount of Blackwood blood and Dane blood, as well as Targaryen blood. And after that, the kids have incest for 2 generations, which means that Rhaegar and Dany are essentially half Blackwood. They have the same chance of being Blackwood as they do Targaryen, if you will, because of their genetic makeup. So the idea that Dany is accessing her Greenseer powers is not out of the question. I mean, I don't know if I'd call it tinfoil, but it's definitely not crazy, because Bloodraven has that exact same genetic makeup potentially. One Targaryen, one Blackwood, and we see that he is accessing his Greenseer powers. The other thing I'll say about this is that Dany is the first one that can wake dragons in generations. Why is that? Well, maybe the fact that George sort of retconned Dane and Blackwood lineage into the last couple of intermarriages with Targaryens before Dany and Rhaegar are born is not an accident, like the Danes and the Blackwoods, guys. I mean, these are 2 of the most magical families in the story. So it could be either one. It could be like, well, if the Danes are the original Great Empire of the Dawn blood, then maybe a little Dane blood gave Dany a kick for dragon hatching. But I prefer the idea that the original act of creating the blood of the dragon bond is actually a mutation of Greenseer powers. and that if you take green seer powers and do some fucked up Valyrian blood magic, you get the blood of the dragon. And that's why it's sort of similar, but kind of different. And so Daenerys having this fresh Blackwood infusion of blood might enable her to wake the dragons. I've long suspected that. So Emma, what do you think? I see you nodding your head over there a little.
Yeah, basically entirely agree. Like, I'm not sure that we'll get evidence for it per se, but it makes perfect logical sense with everything that you talk about. So
yeah, I agree as well. I mean, like, I've always felt like there was something, my personal tinfoil that I kind of mentioned on the Three Witches stream, Matt and Lauren and I had recently, was that they actually have dragon blood infused into them. Like, they're actually part dragon physically, which ties into like the deformed babies and stuff.
Totally.
So maybe some kind of pact was made, which would nicely echo what we suspect the Children of the Forest and the others and men did, or the Starks did, or whatever.
Yeah, because think about all the Lightbringer stuff at one level is this. I mean, it's sex. it's the sword, So the whole idea of the moon and the sun combining, or Azor Ahai combining with the Weirwood tree to make Lightbringer, or to make Azor Ahai reborn, it has to do with children too. And how do you make a human that's a green seer? Well, you need a human to impregnate a child of the forest woman, and they need to have a kid. And there's all kinds of scattered hints about that in the history of the world of Ice and Fire.
Not Maggie, Ghost of High Heart, definitely, at least part child of the forest.
Right, and then you got the Winged Knight from the Vale ancient First Man folklore, who was said to have wed a child of the forest, and she died in childbirth supposedly. And there's a bunch of hints around that at the Reach, and even the Starks seem to have some child of the forest blood, the Warg King and the Marsh King and all that stuff. So it's out there. But let's see, what was I talking about? What was I just talking about? Jog my memory. Lost my train of thought.
Dany's Blackwood blood.
Right. Yes. Okay. So the whole point is that Azor Ahai Senior, the whole point may have been to take Nissa Nissa as a wife to create Azor Ahai Junior, who would be the Dragon Green Seer, the Green Dragon. So it may be that I always talk about how we don't know how many generations are happening here, and Azor Ahai Reborn could be the child, or it could be the resurrected Azor Ahai Senior. Either one. There's probably both happening. Dad probably got rezzed. There was probably a kid. The kid probably got rezzed. He had a kid who got rezzed, and on and on and on and on. So the point is, like, part of this myth may be about Azor Ahai seeking out Nissa Nissa to create a child who could be a green seer dragon. And we have Bloodraven, who's a green seer dragon. And then we have Dany, like I said, who has all this Blackwood blood, and Jon's got some too. And of course, Jon has the whole point of Jon is that he's a combination of Stark and Targaryen, with Stark having access to green seer and skin changer magic, and Jon is a skin changer who's also the blood of the dragon. So to me, it seems like George is telling us this combination of blood of the dragon and skin changer or green seer is pretty friggin' important. So the idea that Dany's got Blackwood blood, it's hard for me to accept that it means nothing. But what do you think, chat? What do you think, Emma?
It means something. Go ahead, Emma.
Yeah, I didn't really have much to add. Just agree.
You always say that right before you go on to say something smart. So go ahead and keep talking.
So no, I genuinely don't have anything to say this time. That's a genuine thing. Although we did ask for questions from the chat, so there's a couple of questions from the chat that I've saved on my phone. That's why I keep looking down.
Go for it.
I'm not ignoring.
Please.
So Ravenous Reader said, I find it intriguing that Dany hears Viserys' voice haunting her on the Dothraki Sea, as if Viserys has gone into the Weir Net. Care to comment on that?
Yeah, that is interesting. It's hard to tell exactly what role Viserys plays at times, because he dies. Let me think about that for a second, because Dany's kind of like Azor Ahai Reborn, so it's almost like Viserys was a sacrifice for her, there's a little bit of a gender flip thing happening there. But ultimately, Dany is hearing the voice of Quave speaking through the stars. And I was just a second ago saying that Quave is like Stoneheart or the ghost of Highheart. She's essentially dead Nissa Nissa inside the Weirwood net, speaking out through the stars. So I would tend to think that, Viserys speaks to her. Then Jorah speaks to her through the voice, like the grass itself. Like the grass makes noise, swaying, that becomes Jorah's voice. So that's, even though Jorah, it's Jorah's words, it's actually the green sea itself that's speaking to her. Similarly, when Davos gets fished out of Blackwater Bay on the spears of the Merlin King, he hears the voice of the sea turn into the voice of the maiden. And she's saying, you killed us, you burned us. So this is dead Nissa Nissa from the sea speaking to an Azor Ahai reborn character. So I think Dany is Azor Ahai reborn in this scene when she's wandering through the sea and hearing all these voices. So I'm not sure that that Viserys is particularly important, but it's kind of like all the people that got sacrificed along the way are speaking to her, something like that. What other questions you got, Emma? Or feel free to add on to that.
I was only going to add that haunting implies ghosts. So ghosts are frequently just greenseer, related to greenseer metaphors. So like the ghost of High Heart, for instance.
It's like ghost grass too, because the grass is speaking with a ghostly voice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. And Viserys is called the shadow of a snake. So he's kind of like some remnant, some sort of ghost.
He's like the ghost of what the Targaryen lineage was. Like, he's like the last Targaryen, but obviously Dany is. But he's kind of like the spirit of, I guess, what caused the Targaryen chain to fall, if you think about it. Dynasty, not chain, sorry. Like, all of the bullshit and the politics and the thinking you're better than nothing. Like, I think that ties in a lot with why the Targaryens lost their ability to hatch dragons. Like, they forgot. I would definitely say Viserys forgot who he was. And he is a ghost in that sense, if that makes sense.
There was someone a minute. Yeah, it totally makes sense. Absolutely. Because it's also implied that he goes in, his death pays for one of the dragons being born. Because we get a dragon called Viserion.
Viserion, duh.
So it's kind of like, and Dany says, he'll do what my brother cannot. So it's kind of like a rebirth. And Viserion is the white dragon. Viserys actually does have a decent amount of other symbolism. So he could symbolize like the part of Nissa Nissa or the Weirwood trees that fuels the creation of the others. That might be the thing. I'd have to go and focus on him. Emma, what do you think?
So his lilac is a color that tends to be associated with ice type things. So lilac and indigo, bizarrely, which is Viserys's eyes and Rhaegar's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that Rhaegar does Knights Kingy type things in kidnapping Lyanna to have baby John. So there's that, and then that links to sort of Hisdar Zolorak's house colours, which is lilac and indigo. That's his sort of family colours. And he obviously has Hisdar of the frozen penis.
I was gonna let you
with
say
with
that.
the blue black thing. So with the blue black lips. Qarth. All of the indigo to Qarth. Qarth sends a ship called the Indigo Star to try and get Dany to stop her crusades to end slavery. They in the House of the Undying.
Lots of indigo.
The Undying get called indigo a lot, and
blue.
They have silver flutes. Yeah,
right. They have a blue heart, and they obviously, and they're cold shadows. So this is obviously other symbolism. So finding the indigo in there tells you that indigo is symbolic of the purple that we associate with dragons turning into something having to do with the others. So yeah, I totally agree. Nice job. And of course, Emma specializes on color and repeated word phrases and stuff. So that's the kind of thing that she catches.
And indigo often can easily be like distinguished or confused with blue.
Yeah.
And it's
right. That's the whole point.
Blue,
Yeah.
purple. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And you also have like Edric Dane, who is symbolic of the good other, a dragon that's turning into an icy kind of dragon. And he's got blue purple eyes and the ash hair that's like super pale. So.
And 2 dawns are heralded. So when it runs through the colour of the change of the sky, 2 dawns are called indigo dawns. One is Catelyn watching dawn in the Vale, and one is Jon's depiction of the ice magic dawn. So again, you've got the associations with ice. One of the dawns is in the Vale, home of like major ice moon symbol, and the other one is just explicitly a magical ice dawn. So
nice.
Well, that just shows like. And you would be able to tell us, that George Martin is pretty consistent with his choice of words and colors and things like that. I mean, it's very consistent, actually.
Yeah. So like it's when you look at stuff like blue, it's impossible to tell because there's so many shades of blue. But when you get down into the really, really specific stuff where there's maybe like 20, 30 quotes, it's usually pretty specific. So yeah.
Yeah, that's the whole rule of thumb. Like the more times you see a pattern repeated, the less likely it becomes that it's coincidence. So that's why we do so many examples. And that's why I think A Song of Ice and Fire is different than most books. Most books could not be analyzed the way that we do, where we expect a repeating phrase, to mean something, and we expect everything to have this meaning. Like George is giving us a lot of consistency and a lot of examples of all the major ideas so that we can feel confident to look for them. And, when I was first starting out in this process, I used to occasionally wonder like, oh man, am I just like tripping out? And like, is this all pareidoia? And I'm just like hallucinating all of this. And then George is one day going to answer a question and destroy all of my theories. And I'm going to like hang my head in shame. And like, but 3 years on, it's like I've found so many examples of all the various ideas that I feel like I have a good idea, just like as many of you probably do, of how George talks to us in his symbolic language. And after a while, you just sort of get the hang of it. So, yeah.
After a while, you just become one of the church.
Yeah.
Exactly.
One consistent question that cropped up was whether Dany will actually use green seer powers, and whether if she does, that will be a key aspect in the War for the Dawn as well.
So I think we can triangulate that she's very likely to use a glass candle. As I'm fond of saying, Marwyn the Mage is headed on a ship to Slaver's Bay to help Dany in the matters that he understands that will decide the fate of the world. He's been using glass candles powerfully to keep an eye on everything at the wall and much else. The Citadel doesn't give a crap about their glass candles. They're in a basement somewhere. They've got 4 that are like rumored to exist that nobody ever uses. So if Marwyn the Mage is hoofing it out of the Citadel to go and help Dany save the world, and there's 4 glass candles, like, is he going to take one of those glass candles with him to Daenerys the Valyrian? Like, of fucking course he is. So I think we can expect Marwyn to show up in Slaver's Bay with a glass candle. So that will put us a little closer. That'll have Dany using the glass candle and basically becoming a magician at this point, or a sorceress, if you want to say. She's going to be using it to communicate with Quaithe or to see the threat of the others and realize she needs to go help Jon Snow. I mean, who knows what she'll see. But that's going to bring us closer. So is Dany actually are we going to see her use green seer powers in a way that will be conclusive? That's a good question. Emma or SANRIXIAN, can you think of an example of what we might see? Will she actually skin change Drogon or something?
I don't think she's going to go so far as to skin change Drogon. But as far as green seer powers, like, I think she already has displayed that she has somewhat prophetic dreams or visions, at least. So maybe she will look into this glass candle you're talking about and see what she needs to do, and maybe use Drogon, Viserion, or Rhaegal as kind of like a scout and see and warg into them to see through their eyes.
we could see that, or we could see maybe Dany using the glass candle, but then able to communicate with Bran or see the things that Bran sees.
Ooh, that'd be
mean,
cool.
Melisandre sees Jon and Bran as like a wolf or like a wooden face, but it's very, very cryptic. Like she's not seeing the Weirwood net. She's seeing like a basic representation of Bran and Bloodraven on the astral plane. But I wonder if maybe Dany will go farther that will make us start asking questions about that.
I hope so.
That'd be cool. Jon is like in his he's in his penultimate crypts dream while he's dead and inside Ghost, and he gets to the end of the crypts, opens up the last door, and Dany's like, "Oh, hi. What are you doing
Daenerys.
here?" I'm Daenerys. Stormborn.
Here's a boat.
Here's a boat.
Want a boat sex? I'm the worst.
So we'll see. We'll see. It might be one of those things that George is just implying, and he's just teasing us about the blood of the dragon having some origin with green seers, and we'll never know the truth of it. But I mean, he's given us Jon Snow and Bloodraven as very definitive crossovers of dragon blood and green seer blood, and Dany is one too, you know, technically. So whatever George is planning to make out of that intersection, we are going to see it. We are going to see why it's important. So I don't know. We'll just have to watch out and hang on and see.
Hang on to your butts. I feel like almost like with all the dragon dreaming and green sing with what we were talking about, I feel like they can almost be used. Well, no, they can't be used interchangeably, but they're definitely connected.
Yeah, there's some important differences, and George has even said that they're different.
Right.
You know, so it's definitely like the farthest you can take the theory is that the blood of the dragon was created with the green seer magic and then sort of mutated and became its own thing, which is now different. So the common link is one that's in the past. But I just like the idea that one of the reasons Dany was able to hatch the dragons is because she had that blood. But
well, George
we shall see.
George has specifically called that a one-off miracle, but I feel like that's an excuse, and I feel like we're more on the right track.
Well, it definitely is a miracle, but the question is, why was she able to do it? You know,
exactly. Yeah.
Let's see. She's saying Raven Salix pipes in that when Dany's in the House of the Undying, it says she took a step forward, but then Drogon leapt from her shoulder. He flew to the top of the ebony and weirwood door, perched there, and began to chew at the carved wood. That's pretty cool. That gives us a dragon like chewing at the weirwood tree. Reminds you of Nidhogg, the Nidhogg serpent chewing at Yggdrasil's roots. Reminds you of the dragon striking the tree, the thunderbolt dragon meteor striking the tree. It's pretty cool.
To go back to my trademark of colour fire, this in the House of the Undying is, I think, one of the only time I think that Drogon actually breathes orange flame, and I've sort of suggested that orange flame is related to the moon meteors. So when you see Drogon biting at a weirwood door, and ebony, which is another magic symbol, but when you see him biting at a weirwood door, it's like the moon meteor opening the weirwood portal to get to the heart inside, and then he breathes orange fire, which is moon meteor fire, to burn the heart, which he then shreds to ribbons, and then ribbons is there's something going on with ribbons, but I'm not entirely sure what yet, but there is something going on there. So yeah. Nice.
Ribbons might be like banners, but yeah, that's cool. That is very cool. And he's chewing on the door. The people behind the door offer to teach Dany the speech of dragonkind. So there's a transfer of knowledge, you know, learning a new language of the gods or something like that. So very cool, very cool. There's also a symbol of a black sea. So we've been talking about the green sea, but there's a scene, I forget if it's Tyrion's chapter on the Summer Sea or a Victorian chapter on the Summer Sea, but in one of those chapters, during the Eye of the Storm, the sea is as flat as flat as a dragon glass sea. So it gives you the idea, and we know the black waters everywhere, like the Blackwater Bay, the black water of the Womb of the World, the Black Pond at the Weirwood at Winterfell Godswood, and then so now we've got this black pond is like a dragon glass sea, and we know that the Winterfell Weirwood gazes at its own reflection in the black pond, which seems a shout out to the whole idea of a dark mirror, and of course that means an obsidian mirror. So the glass candles tying to a black sea shows you that it's a very similar, if not overlapping, set of symbols when we talk about dragon glass and a black sea. It's similar to the green sea, if not the same.
So there's a black dragon that breathes green flame in that scene, because Mokoro's iron staff is a black iron staff, but when he stamps the butt of it, it's got green flame that comes out of its maw, and that when he does that and then the green flame comes, that is when all hell breaks loose. The black and blinding rain falls down, the whisper of the wind is a threat and then it becomes a howl, the mast cracks like thunder, the sails described as taking wing, and so there's a whole that scene there is just insane, and I went into it a bit in my Green Fire essay. Nice. And Moor itself it's only referred to 4 times in the entire series, and all of it's related to the simultaneous binding of dragons and weirwood trees. So there's the maw of the mouth of the white tree, weirwood tree. There's the maw of Mokoro's staff. I've forgotten the third maw. But then there's also Crescent stepping down into the maw of the Great Hall, where he then sacrifices himself to the weirwood woman of Melisandre.
Would it be Quentyn staring into Rhaegal's mouth?
Yes.
There you go. Had a feeling.
So, yeah.
Nice. That sounds like a good, you got a staff, which is a tree symbol, with a dragon mouth, breathing green fire, and then the storm breaks loose. The mast is like a tree. It cracks like thunder, which gives you the lightning striking the tree idea on a sea dragon boat. So
during a storm,
and that's I think that's right after the dragon glass sea too. So
yeah, it is. Yeah, and Victarion also has it's not like dragon glass, but it's also inky. So when his hand gets Mokoro'd, the sky is deep and bloody, and the sea is black as ink, I think is the description. So that's at sunset, and then he emerges red to the elbow, which is an Azor Ahai symbol. As well, like that's a specific call out to. Yeah.
Nice, that's beautiful, and it just goes to show you guys, like, as much as I give away and reveal here, there's always a ton more. And any of the symbols and motifs that we uncover here on Mythical Astronomy, you can then just keep in your mind and do some rereads and find. There's always more stuff to find. I mean, these books are long. This series is long. Every chapter has symbolism in it. And Martin amuses himself by finding new ways to create similar metaphors. He just reshuffles the pieces, creates an awesome scene out of it, and it helps give the novel some sort of synergy and makes it rhyme a little bit. But I mean, there's stuff I haven't found, and there's that have to do with the things that I've explored even heavily, let alone the sort of symbols and mythemes I haven't found yet. So all of this stuff is always like meant to enhance your own rereads, so that when you read the novel, it'll start to pop out to you like it does when I read it. And it's almost like a hologram popping out of your book, like a picture book where it like pops up and like becomes a house and shit. That's how I think about it. So very cool. Very cool. I think we're going to get ready to wrap it up here. That was a nice find, Emma. Thanks for tacking that on. So Sanri, let's take a look at where we are here.
All right. I'm just about wrapping it up. Maybe a few more details.
That looks pretty good.
I achieved the fierceness.
You sure did.
Yeah. It was very inspiring to listen to you guys talk and participate while drawing this. Yeah.
Well, thank you. This is sensational. This really captures the feel.
Good.
It really does.
I love that. That's amazing.
Yeah, the lighting is great. the glow and the shadows. It must be hard to really to get that right, you know, but it really feels like a dim room, like lit by candles and stuff and fires and whatnot, little torches. That's great.
Oh yeah, lighting is one of the most difficult things to do, and I do have to admit, being a 3D animator and having to physically calculate wattage of lights has definitely improved my painting skills.
I see that. Yeah, I see when you do the lighting process,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the lighting steps in your process. Like at a certain point, you'll stop and you'll add the lighting cast. That's usually when the thing really starts to pop.
Yeah.
So
yeah, once I have it all, I work in multiple styles, but that's one of my favorite ways to do.
cool. Nice. So, well, again, I see people thanking us, Emma, you and me and Sandra, all of us for the content today. So our pleasure to bring it to you, and thank you for tuning in. Thank you guys that send in super chats and questions, and those of you who have run on over to Patreon to sign up. I'm sure there's been a ton of new Patreons in the last 2 hours. I'm sure of it. Or people checking their canceled subscriptions and signing back up. That's just as good. So yeah, just a reminder, just guys, if you're a patron, just please do double check. But in any case, thank you. I hope you've enjoyed the show today. I did have a little bit of a, not quite a panic, but last night I was furiously texting all the myth heads. I was like, guys, I don't know if I understand the prologue completely, and who's Waymar and Will, and which one's Nissa, and oh man, it's so we kind of like, we talked it out a little bit on the group chat, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to put this aside. We'll work on it until we totally understand it. And I've got this other episode ready to go. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I think now what we'll do is we'll probably do an official, we'll either do a Q&A next week based to follow up this episode, or we will do one more Weirwood Compendium episode and then do a Q&A to follow up on both episodes. So I'll decide this week which one it is, but we'll keep going with this train of thought, at least for a couple weeks. I'll probably slide up between two Weirwoods in 3 weeks from now and get a panel going. So that's what you guys have to look forward to. And like I said, Disputed Lands has a new episode coming out, and Storm Emma's she's got a new essay coming out sometime, hopefully before Fire and Blood does, which is like what, the 21st of this month?
20th, I believe.
20th.
Yeah, somewhere like that. So I've got a couple of weeks, which should be enough to get this Red Fire essay. I've had horrific writer's block on it for about a year, so it's getting, but it's getting there. I am writing some stuff on it now, which is better than most of the past 11 months. So hopefully, finally, it will be done.
If it makes you feel any better, some of the material in the episode that you just heard is over a year old. And this is very much like some stuff that's old and some stuff I wrote this morning, all wrapped up. Literally the last like 5 paragraphs I wrote this morning. So it can work out well. It's just sometimes the thing has to sit around and marinate, and eventually you're like, okay, I see it now. I see it.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
best of luck finishing that up. But like I said, the Red Mice to Play link is in the description of this video. It's been dropped in the chat, so go check that out and subscribe. Make sure you're subscribed to Lucifer Means Lightbringer YouTube channel. Make sure you click like on this video. Make sure you click the notification bell on my YouTube channel so you get notifications when we start streaming and you won't miss anything. And let's take one last glimpse at the SANRIXIAN masterpiece. This is another legendary work of serious art. No silly Weirwood submarines today. This is great.
Got my blur effect in there for some depth. I'm calling it good.
Cool. Well, look for that on Twitter.
Yep.
Later today at SANRIXIAN. I'm at the Dragon LML, and Emma is at EL Smith 1995, correct?
1994.
94.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So that's it, guys. Thanks a lot for joining us. It's been a good episode. I'm happy to get into this material. I've got lots more coming. The astral projection horse stuff that's coming next episode is going to be pretty good. I'm looking forward to that. Lots of Silver Sea horse. By the way, a couple people mentioned House Valerion. who has a silver seahorse sigil on sea green and they're dragon people, we're going to get there next week or whenever I do the next episode. Trust me. Lots of Valyrian stuff coming. So thank you very much, Emma. Thank you, SANRIXIAN. And thank you, everyone, for joining me. And I will see you next week at the same bat time and bat channel. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.